Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. We're recording this a few days after the trade deadline, and so it only seems right to be discussing every team's trade deadline, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether they weren't active enough, whether they were too active. But I'll start it off with you, Gabe, and I'll start it off not necessarily with what you consider the biggest move of the deadline, because that seems pretty unanimous to everyone. But I will ask you, what was your favorite move of the deadline?
My favorite move, man. And a deadline like this, that's kind of hard to decide because there's a lot of moves that are really good for a lot of teams. Not really too many teams that I'm like, ooh, this is terrible. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the more underrated moves or maybe some of the not so good moves a little bit later in. But just like looking at it from a distance, and I don't want to take the most obvious one, I'm going to take a homer pick. And I guess it's not one move, but more so kind of a series of moves. And I'm going to go with the Clippers, man, because some stars got traded, but the Clippers kind of said, yeah, we got our stars. We just need to be healthy. And they already had a lot of depth. But I feel like they took some of those guys that weren't working, like John Wall wasn't doing too hot. Luke Kennard was not going to play defense next to most of the other guards they had, so it wasn't really the best recipe for success. And I think they went out and I think they got some pieces who might fit a little bit better on some pretty good value, I think. Getting Mason Plumlee, he finally got out of Charlotte, and I think he can be a really good backup center for them. Bones Highland was becoming one of the premier backup point guards in the league. And Eric Gordon's a guy who you could pretty much rely on to give you some solid bench production, and he finally gets out of Houston. So it's like not only do they do work to make themselves better, but from my personal perspective, it's like they took some guys who needed to be off their teams that I was tired of seeing on those rosters and really resolved those issues.
That's a good pick. One of my favorite moves we kind of already talked about last week, the Mike Conley move. So I'll pick a different one. I love the Jalen McDaniels pickup for the Philadelphia 76ers. I feel like they made additions in the offseason and they thought Daniel House was going to be that extra wing off the bench. He hasn't been good for them this season. Doesn't really get playing time for them. Jalen McDaniels was one of the bright spots on the Hornets this season. And they got him for not really giving up that much, just like I think a little bit of draft capital, which is perfect for them. And they sent Matisse Thybulle out, who's an offensive liability when it comes to playoff time. Jalen McDaniels can at least, hit some shots and be effective on the offensive side of the floor while still playing some really good defense too. I think he'll fit right in, man. I'm very excited to see that pickup. I think a move that was kind of under the radar, nobody really touched on too much, but might be one of those more important moves once the playoffs come around.
Yeah, that was definitely an underrated move. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, like you say, Thybulle come playoff time, he just struggles too much offensively at this point in time. As good as he is defensively, he just has too many deficiencies as a shooter to really hold that much value. And you get someone who can shoot the three a bit, is someone, again, that you're going to be in a situation where, similar to Thybulle, you will have to pay to keep around past this season, but they would have the opportunity to do that. Given the fact that he's not as high profile of a defensive name, it'll probably be for cheaper. And they even got seconds back in that deal, so they get a little bit more flexibility in trades moving forward. So I really like that move. My favorite move is probably the Josh Hart move. The Knicks needed a small forward, badly. They didn't really have small forwards on that team. I mean, RJ Barrett's obviously played there a lot this year, but you can even argue that he's more of a 2-guard than a 3-guard at times. They needed a small forward, period. And Josh Hart is someone that contributes to winning at the highest level. He's always been a great defender. He's always been one of the best rebounders, if not the best rebounder for his size in the league. And already we're seeing tonight, on the night of recording this, he's dropping 27 points. Whatever it is about Josh Hart after getting traded, I don't know, but he just figures it out offensively. And if he can continue to shoot the ball this well in New York, then that's just going to help them even more so moving into the postseason.
I love that trade just because of how happy Jalen Brunson was when he found out the news. And then you can tell they just got that brotherly relationship. Like, they go way back. Like, I love to see that. But, yeah, like you said, they didn't really have that wing. RJ Barrett, he's a wing player, but they need that kind of wing that does the little things. And that's what Josh Hart's going to bring. And his offense coming back all of a sudden is just a plus because I'm sure when they traded for him, they're like, at least we know we're going to get an elite rebounder for his position. and somebody that's going to grind on the defensive side of the floor. But, if he's, even half of what he was tonight, that's an amazing pickup, one of the best at the deadline.
Definitely. There's a lot of interesting moves that we'll get into tonight. Obviously, we've talked about over the course of the last few days some of the headline moves that happened pre the morning of trade deadline. But let's start off talking about the team that a lot of people would have hoped would have made some moves and ended up staying pretty quiet, and that was the Chicago Bulls. They were one of two teams over the course of the trade deadline that did not make a trade. The other team being the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have since already made an acquisition, which we'll get to later. But I'll get your thoughts first, Tyreek. What are your thoughts on the Chicago Bulls not making a move at this year's trade deadline?
Super disappointing. Even if it wasn't like a DeRozan or a Levine or Vooch being moved, you heard talks about like Caruso being out, maybe Kobe White, some players like that, just, rotational guys, but they didn't do anything, which is just highly disappointing because we talked so much within like the last 2 months since the Bulls really started to struggle. Like, what would their direction be? Is it going to be a deadline move, which apparently it wasn't. So now it's all into the offseason. Like, this is a big offseason for this organization moving forward. They got a lot of big decisions to make. So we'll see how that goes. I don't like the idea of trying to bring in Russell Westbrook. I don't know how true those reports were, but they seem pretty valid. Like, Russ was going to decide between, I think it was the Bulls and maybe the Miami Heat or the Clippers or something like that. But I don't like that. It just seems like a lateral move, like you're just trying so hard to be a playing team. It's just, at this point in the year, obviously, like, we talk so much about Lonzo not being able to play this season, which is a big loss. But, even you kind of got to be real with yourself as an organization. And this franchise was not. Maybe the moves weren't there to be made, but I didn't really see much rumblings after, like, the last few weeks about them making any drastic change or any type of rumors or anything. So I'm very disappointed. I think Bulls fans are probably disappointed too. Just they were one of the teams that we felt controlled the deadline, and they did not do anything at all.
Yeah, I don't know how you can be in that situation and just do absolutely nothing. Just looking at this team and what they've done this year, it's really just kind of the drawbacks of buying in, but not to a championship level. It's like they went out, they got some older players in Vooch and DeMar, kind of gave up a lot of assets in doing so. And now they're at this point where, yeah, they got these guys, and that's pretty much their guys, not a ton of flexibility on the roster. And your ceiling is so low. It's like best case scenario with this Bulls roster, they're not going very far. But it's like if they're going to make some moves, they pretty much, I think, would have to start like the full blow up, because I don't really see a way where you retool around this kind of core, especially with a player like Westbrook, and get any higher than like an 8 seed, given the talent that's in this conference right now. So they just kind of seem lost just from an organizational perspective. It's like, are you just going to stick with this and try to be an 8 seed for the foreseeable future? Or are you going to move off these pieces and start over? And if they haven't moved these pieces yet, like, I don't know when they will, but they definitely should have got ahead of the curve, because now they're probably not in the sweepstakes for one of the best picks this offseason. And that's probably just going to be another year of them kind of struggling to get back to where they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the Bulls are in a weird spot where they do kind of have to commit fully to a rebuild, you would think, at least. But even if that wasn't the direction, which is understandable given the fact they did just pay Zach LaVine, they obviously felt good enough that this group could still have success. And understandably so, because they were really good at times last year when they were healthy. Obviously, that's not the case this year. Obviously, they're not playing as well. The offense that's supposed to be great is not as great. You would have at least hoped that they would have made a move or two to try and get some draft equity back, try and have a little bit more flexibility, because they are hurting in the draft equity department right now, which for a team that isn't doing that well and would like to have some first-round picks to start to build back their young core again, you need that coming in. And the other concern is that even if they still want to win, even if they want to keep LaVine because they just locked him up, even if they want to keep DeMar because he's their all-star, Vucevic is in the last year of his deal. And as much as this Bulls team wants to win, or it seemingly wants to win, I still don't see a world where Vucevic is a Chicago Bull next year. It just doesn't seem like a scenario that is likely from A, I don't know how much the Bulls are going to be willing to pay him, and most certainly B, I can't imagine Vucevic is going to be all that keen to coming back to this Bulls team at this point in time in his career. He's probably going to want to win, and he's not exactly getting any younger, and the Bulls aren't exactly going to be in title contention next year. So that remains to be seen, but not moving him was definitely interesting. But it remains to be seen. Maybe they're waiting for the offseason, maybe some sign-in trades with Vucevic get involved, but I don't like giving out F grades that much at trade deadline or offseason time for moves, but the Bulls are getting a rare F grade for me for how they approach this trade deadline.
I'm going to give them a D- because you brought up a great point. You would have hoped that they would have at least tried to get some draft equity, right? And I think what might have messed them up is the way the market kind of was this year. Like we saw a lot of second-round picks being thrown around. They were probably being stubborn like Caruso's good enough to at least get a first. Maybe it's a late first from the Warriors or something like that, but they probably thought he should be good enough to get us a first, and the offer probably wasn't there, and they didn't want to sell him for second-round picks. Maybe that's what it was. So I'm going to give them a D-, just giving them the benefit of the doubt. But it does look bad on their part that Vooch could potentially walk this offseason, and the stuff that you gave up for him, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., and multiple first-round picks, it's looking like one of the worst trades in the last 10 years if Vucevic does decide to walk.
Yeah, I got to go F, man. I think just where they're at, you are in the worst spot to be as an NBA team.
Is it purgatory?
Dare I say, it's like this team was doing so well. And now for about a year, pretty much ever since Lonzo started struggling with injury, it's crazy how much of a needle mover he seems to be now, because from him getting injured around a year ago to the rest of that season and now into this season, this is just not the same team. It doesn't look like they're contending for anything in the playoffs. If they sneak into a play-in, they're probably out first game. But then they didn't make themselves worse either. So it's like, are you trying to get better and compete, or do you want to get worse and try to rebuild? And they did neither, which means what are they going to do? Probably get another like 7th or 8th pick like they seem to always get, and then just kind of retain this mediocrity. Even if Vooch walks, like, how much of a needle mover really is Vooch? If they walk into next year with no Vooch and they still have Zach and DeMar, I feel like they're still probably going to be better than the bottom of the bottom. So they'll probably just still be in that 11 seed type spot. So it's just like you needed to do something and you did nothing. Either try to compete or try to not compete.
I think what's even worse is their pick is top 4 protected, if I'm not mistaken. So
correct. Yeah.
They're not bad enough to be top 4 unless they magically jump up again, but I don't see that. You don't want to bank on having to jump up. So yeah, it's not looking good. And it sucks because the Bulls fans just went through like a 5-year rebuild just to get back to the playoffs. And now it's like the next step might be another rebuild if you want your franchise to be relevant anytime soon.
Bought into a low ceiling, man. You went from, buying in to get like DeMar on his 3rd team and Zach LaVine as your guys. Neither of those guys are a number 1 on a contender. I mean, if you want to consider the Raptors with DeMar a contender like 5 years ago, I think that was really good roster construction, really good depth. Neither of those guys with like middling supporting cast is taking you that far.
Was also a much weaker Eastern Conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like 50 wins would get you a 1 seed those years.
Yeah. All due respect to that Raptors team, as a Raptors fan, they would not have as much success as they did if that team was put in this year's Eastern Conference. There's just no way. Yeah,
that might be a 48-win team.
Yeah, they might be a 4 or a 5 seed as opposed to a 2 or a 1 seed.
Which is a big difference for sure.
But yeah, it's definitely a tough spot for Bulls fans right now, but they don't really seem to be doing much different than most of those teams in and around the middle of nowhere in the East right now. We've talked about the Raptors deal and acquiring Jakob Poeltl. In his first couple games, he's already tremendously impacted the defense. But again, it's a team that's kind of in the middle with a little bit more upside than Chicago just because of their youth and a little bit more pick equity. But they decided to buy in even more so than Chicago did. And similar things can be said for Washington, who I will say have been playing relatively good basketball over the last month or so, now seeing themselves in the 9 seed, but decided to trade away Rui Hachimura. He's been great with the Lakers, but then opted to not really move off of any other vets. Opted to hold on to Kyle Kuzma, even though he is likely going to be a free agent this summer who's going to want a significant increase in his payday. How do you guys feel about Kyle Kuzma not getting moved? Because personally, I knew he wasn't going to get moved, but it seems like the type of move that the Wizards probably should have made to get some value back.
Yeah, like you said, kind of expected it, but if it's a smart move, the Wizards probably aren't going to do it. It's just the Washington way.
If we're giving out grades, Wizards probably get a D from me, man. It's like the best asset you had that was probably going to walk, held on to him. You got rid of Will Barton, you got rid of Rui, 2 NBA players. I mean, one's on the buyout market, so probably not a lot of value around the league, but got rid of 2 NBA players for – I mean, Kendrick Nunn is cool, but I would say as a roster you got worse. And like I say, if you're not trying to compete, get worse and try to get the best picks, but you're still paying Bradley Beal $50 million a year. So for the direction that you locked yourselves into for 5 years, you're not accomplishing that. So I got to go with the D, man. It's not like something egregious, but this is not how you manage a roster that's paying a star player $50 million per year.
Yeah, they're one of the newer teams that I want to see blow it up all the way. We've been screaming for the Pacers to do it for years, and they somewhat did it, retooled a little bit. Wizards are that next team. They're probably not going to do it, which is, I guess, fine if they enjoy being in this position. I don't enjoy seeing this team in this position, but overall organizational structure decisions, they get an F. But for the trade deadline, like Gabe said, like a D is fine. They didn't. It's more of what they did not do, and trading Kyle Kuzma would have been the smart thing to do, but smart and Wizards management skills don't really go hand in hand. That's kind of what I'm noticing. But I guess on the bright side, Kendrick Nunn's looked fine with them, and they're winning games, which is kind of crazy. I think that shows more that Wes Unseld Jr. is actually a pretty good young coach. Like, he kind of doesn't get talked about because it's the Wizards, and everybody wants to see them blow it up. But he's actually a pretty good young coach, man. So shout out to Wes Unseld. That's the positivity I have for the Wizards in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. They have been on a good run as of late. I will give them that, but they unfortunately are one of the 2 teams that have an F grade for me. So Kuzma had to be moved for me, and I knew it wasn't going to be, but I just don't see a world where he's back in the Wizards roster next year. And if you're there's just no world where this Wizards team shouldn't be moving off of him, because either you need value back to help you on the court because you want to win, or you need value back in terms of picks because you are finally deciding to make the right decision and start to commit to a rebuild. And it just seems like they are continuing to absolutely commit to nothing, which does not surprise me and isn't really surprising any of us at this point. But
maybe they don't need picks, man, because they don't hit on their draft picks like you would think. Or maybe they have a talent development problem too, because Rui left and he just seems better because he's playing with the Lakers. But he just seems a lot better. I don't know why, he just does. Maybe if Denny was on a different team, he would look even better than what he has been lately. Like, it's just, Thomas Bryant left, he kind of ascended. Like, it just seems like they have a talent development issue where they just can't draft right. Johnny Davis is allegedly the worst rookie of all time, it seems like. I don't get this organization. Like, they're so confusing in every single way. Like, you would just like for them to, like you said, make the right decisions, blow it all up. But I don't know. They just have this false hope. And delusion is, sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it's a really damn bad thing. And for the Wizard, it is really bad. Like, they are too delusional for their own good.
Yeah, they really are. And like you say, I don't know if you can truly pinpoint a key problem in this organization, because from the bottom up, it just seems like there's a lot of holes in their roster building, in their roster construction, in their player development. It just seems like a whole lot is going wrong. Coaching looks good, and they're playing some decent ball right now, but from a structural standpoint of finding talent and developing that talent and making sure they can put out a winning product on a consistent basis, just doesn't look like it's there right now. And hopefully they turn it around, but it's definitely been a tough go. But 7-3 in their last 10 and up on the Warriors as we're recording, so I will give them that much.
Good for them. Trade view.
Hey man, I did hear that Seattle is looking for an NBA team. I do
Wizards
think
Wizards ain't losing their team. Or Washington's not losing their team. If the Kings didn't get moved after 15 years of missing the playoffs, the Wizards are getting moved.
No, they're good. I don't think there's anyone in the league. I don't think anyone in the league right now is on that type of watch.
Nobody should lose their team. We just need an expansion.
Yeah.
Too much good talent. We need an expansion.
Definitely. Definitely need an expansion. Very needed.
Hey man, all I know is here's what's about to happen if they expand. It's gonna be Vegas and Seattle, and then Memphis is gonna come east, and then Ja's not gonna be good in the West because he's not gonna be in the West anymore. So that solves all the problems.
Ja's not good in the West. Can we kill the elephant in the room, man? Can we talk about the Phoenix Suns? I feel like we should. Because outside of the Kevin Durant, outside of the KD trade, I think they did a very good job.
They did.
I mean, Terrence Ross was a curveball because it seemed like he was going. I forget what the first report was, but it seemed like he was going somewhere, and then Phoenix swooped in, and he's a Sun all of a sudden. I like that. Very good move. We know what Terrence Ross can bring. Hasn't really been playing a lot lately in Orlando because, well, they really need him. And he can provide that bench scoring that this team has desperately missed over the last couple of seasons. I love that move. Obviously, you get Kevin Durant, get TJ Warren in that trade too, who I think was a very undervalued, overlooked piece in that trade. Another guy that can get his own shot, which is very key. And personally, I like the Darius Bazley move because it was like a low-risk move. Somebody that kind of was on the outs with his team that drafted him. And somebody that has a lot of talent too. He was a first-round pick. He was, I think, like a top 50 recruit in the nation. Supposed to go to Syracuse. Really talented guy that can provide a lot. And I think he might still have something there. Maybe it changes scenery. And the team that believes in him is key for him just to, get on the court and start flourishing a little bit. So I really love what they did at the deadline. Obviously, headlined by Kevin Durant, but I think the other pieces that they brought in can really help this team compete for a championship.
Dude, Darius Bazley was killing my high school back in the day, man. It was not a fun time to play against them, but the Phoenix Suns, that is an A+ trade deadline. I think the big thing you see with when teams cash in for a star, especially in a trade scenario, like they give up a lot of depth. But then you look at what they got back, talking about TJ Warren, Terrence Ross, Darius Bazley, like I'm not going to say they were as deep as they were before, but considering the fact that Jay Crowder wasn't playing before, they did pretty well. And to supplement it, the adding of KD, that's way more than the depth you lost from getting rid of the assets you got rid of. So net gain, this team went from we don't know who's winning the West. We have completely open, no clear favorite. We talked about it all the time to the Suns are the team to beat. And the fact that you're able to get a top 5 player in the world and still be this good of a roster top to bottom, I don't see a way where that's not an A+. Because, yeah, you gave up a bunch of picks, but what did everybody say before? They said the Phoenix Suns window is either closing or it's closed. Chris Paul is not getting better. They should have beat the Bucks in 2021 or got all the way there, got it done when they were the 1 seed last year, or else that was it. And now their window, it's not even looking like a window. It's looking like a garage door, man. It's huge. Overwhelming favorite. I shouldn't say overwhelming favorite because there's still great teams in the East, but West-wise, I think I would call them close to an overwhelming favorite because this is just a stacked roster, especially in a playoff series. Like seeing Chris Paul close out games like as recently as last year, and then Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, we know what they do. So, like, holy, we reacted the way we did last week for a reason.
Yeah, if Chris Paul is your third option closing games, you're doing pretty good. You're doing pretty good.
Definitely not doing too bad. I want to say shout out to the Suns' new owner because this is a hell of a way to start your tenure immediately as soon as you take over the team. And of course, the KD trade is one thing, but like you guys mentioned, their moves they made around acquiring KD was good. Getting CJ Warren back was good. The Darius Bazley pickup is really good. Even though he has struggled offensively at times, he is a very defensively sound forward. It's one of the best in the league at defending power forwards, small forwards, can play some small ball five if you need. He's a very solid wing defender. You bring in Terrence Ross, he can give you a little bit of spacing as well. I mean, you can talk about the fact that they lost some depth, they lost some wing quality, and there was a lot of conversation after the KD trade was like, the Suns have no wing depth. That doesn't really track. You brought in CJ Warren. The Darius Bazley pickup was great because Saric is still fine, but defensively he's not great, and he hasn't been quite the same since his injury, unfortunately. And, I mean, you can make an argument that this team still has 6 legit NBA quality wings. Now, whether you want to consider Ish Wainwright and Josh Okogie in that equation is another conversation. But if those guys are like number 5 and 6, you're doing okay. That doesn't even include Torrey Craig. Like, there's a lot of depth still on this team for a team that just traded away Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder. So they did a great job at replacing that depth. They did a great job at getting pieces that are going to fit well for their needs. They get another shooter. They get some good defense in Bazley instead of the more offensive-minded Saric. And like you said, Gabe, got to be favorites going into the Western Conference playoffs as long as they can stay healthy. That's, of course, going to be the biggest caveat. But as long as they're healthy, they're going to be right up there at the top of the mix. They're going to have some stiff competition, but KD trade was great, and the moves they made alongside that made sure they had enough depth moving forward to not be too sparse off the bench going into the postseason.
Yeah, amazing moves. They're built to go against like the Bucks, the Celtics. Like even though you did lose Mikal, Cam Johnson, you still got quality wings like Torrey Craig. I think it's become an underrated piece. Even somebody like an Ish Wainwright, I think he could be valuable in certain matchups, like just to play spot minutes. So they did their thing, and even outside of the Kevin trade. I mean, that made it an A+ deadline right there, but they didn't mess up anything after that. In fact, they got better with the exterior moves that they did, man. So I'm with Gabe. It's definitely an A+ for me, too.
Definitely. I had it as an A just because I didn't quite feel like I could give them an A+ when you're losing your 2 starting wings, but, I mean, I'm not going to fault them for it. You got KD for it, so A+. They got Kevin. They're the team to beat in the West, and they had themselves a great trade deadline one way or another. That is for sure.
Who's next? Should we bash Portland? I know Dev got some harsh words for Portland, man.
Weekly.
I don't even know, man. Like,
are they
I like bashing Portland, but like it's just getting old at this point. It's just getting old. Like Washington, I can still give a hard time to because they're at least in the middle of their era of I can give them a hard time because they've been mediocre for a while, but John Wall was out and they hadn't re-signed Bradley Beal yet. Maybe they'd still move him before the end of his contract. Now we're really in that era. I feel like we've just been saying the same thing about Portland for years now, and they're in the middle. There's no upside. They're probably going to lose in the first round. Defense isn't great. Not making the right moves. Selling guys for poor value at the deadline, and they probably should just trade Dame and start over. And it's been the same thing for years. Same thing this trade deadline, just like last year at the trade deadline. Made moves. They sold those guys for pretty poor value, and they're now worse, even though they're supposedly trying to win. It just doesn't make any sense. They need to pick a direction and go with it. And they've usually been pretty good at that. And they've usually decided, we're going to try and win. And they couldn't even stick with that at the deadline this year. They at least got good value back for Josh Hart. So I'll give them that. But I mean, what does a pick do for them at this point? I mean, they need to push to just even get in the play-in at this point because they've committed significant assets and financial resources to be good, and they might not even make the play-in tournament. So I don't know, man. I got nothing to say about Portland. You get Cam Reddish. Hopefully, he does well over there, and that's about all I got to say.
It's not looking hot for them, man. I think this is gonna have to get it's gonna have to get like a D or D plus, man. I think looking at what they did, like Josh Hart was a quality role player for them. Gary Payton the second, quality role player, and that was just such a mess of a situation too. Like I want to take points away from them for like the whole failed physical thing and everything. Like, what are you doing? Like they said, like wasn't what the Warriors like we're gonna file something with the league or something like over what I don't know. It was some like big thing. And it's like, what is your goal here? Like, oh, you brought in Matisse Thybulle, like solid defensive guard to put next to Dame. You had Gary Payton already. Like he could have been that, but less offensively challenged. Championship winning player. It's just across the board. What, you picked up some picks? You still have Damian Lillard on the roster. Like Devin said, what is your direction? And right now, their direction is a lack of, I guess. I mean, the offseason rebuild was like, okay, maybe you can reload, try to be solid, but then you look at where they are right now, below 500, 12 seed. Like, and you try to get worse, there's only 3 spots to go down. And they're not getting bottom 2, I can tell you that, because I don't think those 2 teams are reaching 27 wins. So what are you doing? Going down 1 spot? It's just like it's really just a loss, man. I guess if you thought Kevin Knox's Fortnite suit was cool, that's a win.
Yeah, I kind of hate this team now. I really do. I used to like them when it was like the CJ Dame, when they were kind of in the middle of that era. But towards the end, it was getting sour. It's like, okay. Like David said, it's like a repeating door. Like, you know, they're going to be like a maybe 8 seed type team, play-in type team. Probably losing the first round, maybe win a game or something like that. But now it's getting old at this point. I like the only reason I will see them making this trade is if their plan in the offseason was, okay, let's blow it up, because this is now a really young roster around Damian Lillard. Like the only vets on that team is really like Nurkic, I guess Jeremy Grant, and maybe like Drew Eubanks. Like not really that many older guys on that team, right? Got a lot of young dudes. Anthony Simon, Shaedon Sharpe. I mean, bringing Cam Reddish. Like got a Matisse Thybulle. We got a lot of younger guys on that team. But we know their plan in the offseason is not going to be to trade Dame. They're going to do the same thing that they did last offseason. Like, you know what? We can make some moves. We can get better. We're going to use these 5 second-round picks we got for Gary Payton, this first round from the Knicks. Maybe throw Cam Reddish in there. Like, we can get another middle-tier player at their position, like how Jeremy Grant kind of was for them. That's what they're going to do, when what they should do is we should probably rebuild, because Anthony Simons is a really good young player. Shaedon Sharpe is showing flashes of being a really good player too. You know, maybe Cam Reddish can fit in there. Like, we got some young guys, you know, get a high draft pick. That's what they should have done, but we know they didn't do it at the deadline, and they're not going to do it in the offseason because they are delusional and think that they can build something around Dame, but it's just not going to happen. So I'm going to give them like a C-.
Yeah, instead they're going to have to use all those picks to replace Jeremy Grant, because I can't imagine he's feeling too good about wanting to re-sign in Portland the way they've been playing this year. But yeah, I'm settling with a D grade for them. And the only reason it wasn't lower is because they actually did get pretty good value back for Josh Hart. But I mean, that's just value for value's sake. It didn't really fit with the supposed direction they were going in before the beginning of the season. So yeah,
right. It's annoying because they could have a really like sexy rebuild, like trade Dame, get maybe a young guy in return and hella picks. And that could be the start right there. You got Shaedon Sharpe, Cam Reddish in there, whatever young guy you get back. Maybe it's a young big, maybe a young wing player, and then hella picks. Like that could be such a sexy rebuild. But hey, I'm not a GM, so I can't make the decisions for him.
We needed Dame to be we needed him to be an Eastern Conference point guard, man. We needed Dame on one of those East contenders, like a Milwaukee Buck or something. I don't know how they would have made it happen, but we needed it, man.
At this point, I don't know who would have the value, because Dame's still really good. For some reason, I'll always come back to Denver being the team. Like, I think that would kind of put Denver over the top if you could do something. Maybe it's Jamal Murray, maybe it's MPJ too. Like, I feel like they could do something around that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I think Denver are definitely a fit. I think Brooklyn are in a pretty darn good spot to do something like that right now too. If they want to flip the switch and be competitive right now, right again, they could put Simmons in the trade. They could put Cam Thomas in the trade, and they got a bunch of firsts to play with now. So
ton of picks.
That could be the type of team to make a move too.
It could be such a good rebuild, but sadly, it's not going to happen. But that could shake up the league a little bit and also make their future really bright, and then let those young guys really rock out. Because obviously, Shaedon Sharpe is not in a position to really show what he can do, because not only do you have Dame, but Anthony Simons is the number 2 and Jeremy Grant's the number 3. All of those guys are averaging 20-plus points. So, you're kind of hindering your young talent from growing while hindering your franchise from getting better as well.
That's just the Portland way, but to keep going in, year out, and it is what it is, man. It just seems to be where they are at this point.
Yeah, I guess teams are content with that, man. But let's get a little more upbeat, because that was kind of depressing, man. I'm not gonna lie. There was you got a team in mind? Y'all got a team in mind? Because
fun. Let's go to the Lakers. Let's go to the Lakers, because
good.
I actually have a lot of positive things to say about the Lakers trade deadline.
I just got one bad thing to say.
As a whole. I'll get the bad news out of the way first. I only got one move I didn't like, and that was them bringing in Mo Bamba. It's here nor there, but Mo Bamba's fine, but he's just not that good. They probably don't really need him. Between Wenyen Gabriel and Jared Vanderbilt, I'd just assume play them at the 5 off the bench as opposed to Mo Bamba. And if Thomas Bryant was still there, then it wouldn't have been a concern, but it seemed like he wanted out. They moved off and get some picks back. It is what it is. Losing on Patrick Beverley is not ideal too, but it is what it is. I would have rather them just have Beverley over Mo Bamba, but outside of that, obviously the trade for D'Angelo Russell was great. I know it's only been a couple games, but it is great to see a wider pool of people finally appreciate just how good and impactful Jared Vanderbilt is, because his impact on the basketball court, people have known who watch Jared Vanderbilt how good he is and how impactful he is. But now that he's on the Lakers, the broader basketball community has finally seen it. And it's funny because it took so long, but it is nice to see for his sake that he is finally getting that appreciation. And I know we've talked about it, but the Rui Hachimura trade was so good too. I mean, I don't get it from the Wizards standpoint. We've talked about that, but for the Lakers standpoint, great move. It's someone now that they're going to be able to re-sign over the next few years, which has been their biggest problem, is that they've just had to continue to re-sign guys on one-year deals because obviously they don't have cap space. They're now going to be able to re-sign him this offseason if they want to, which I would imagine they will at this point. So they're going to actually be able to have a solid wing player on this team for the next few years. So great move for them. Great deadline for them. Obviously, the D'Angelo Russell acquisition in of itself is great, but the pieces around that were really good. And it just finally looks like they bought in to the value of having significant productive role players, and they just haven't had that for a couple of years. And small sample size, but it looks like this could end up being the type of role players that they need to bring in to finally have some level of success beyond what they've had over the last couple of years.
I agree. I had so many positive things to say about this team last week, and I haven't really changed my mind at all. Yeah, I think people may overvalue Mo Bamba just a little bit in the wider NBA fandom, but hey, Sheck Wes is about to be blasting at these Lakers home games, and the fan base might love that. So to put a silver lining on that one, but then the whole deal with the Timberwolves, like the Russ thing was an issue. It was never a fit. It was never a good idea. It was like a name chasing thing, maybe a bit of a rash decision, and really set this team back for a while. Now, was everything his fault there? No. But was he widely considered to be one of the biggest problems with the team? Yeah. And to get off of that and not make it like how a lot of these teams see it, where you get off of like that big contract guy who's not really performing to expectations and you're the one putting in assets to get off of them. They took that as the centerpiece and got players that are like actually good, actually worth something and can help contribute now. So the fact that they were able to get themselves out of close to a nightmare situation like that, point of no return, and really turn this into a roster that, while starting at a big disadvantage, could really do some really fun things. I got to give this like a B plus, maybe an A minus.
Yeah, I'm going to defend Russ real quick because from the jump, everybody knew bad fit. You're asking somebody people wanted Russ to reinvent his game after playing a certain way for over a decade. That's just not how it works in the NBA or when you play basketball, right? Especially when that's not really in your skill set to do so. Everybody knew that was a bad fit. He's going to get the bulk of the blame because it's the Lakers. They're going to overrate the move when it happens in the first place. And then when it falls flat in their face, they're going to hate the guy that was brought in, right? So, it wasn't all Russ. Obviously, it was never a good fit. But it is good that they were able to move off of him and get better talent that fits, right? Adding in D'Angelo Russell, he's the prototypical point guard that you would want next to LeBron and AD, somebody that can shoot the ball, initiate some offense himself, and create for himself too, which is something that they really haven't had really in this installation around AD and LeBron, right? Malik Beasley, obviously, if he can shoot the ball as he's supposed to, very good pickup too. The Vanderbilt move, I think we said last week, or at least I did, I think that was the best part of the trade, and I feel like Laker fans are going to love him the most out of this trade just because of what he can provide, right? That's the only trade also I didn't like was bringing in Mo Bamba. Now, like you said, if Thomas Bryant wanted out, I guess, okay, that's fine. But Mo Bamba's just not good. He's not getting minutes on the Magic, who, yeah, they're playing better basketball now, but they're not a great team or anything. He's not getting minutes there, right? And when he does get minutes, it's not really good minutes. He's supposed to be a stretch five, doesn't really shoot the ball good, doesn't really block shots, doesn't really rebound, doesn't do shit for it. He really doesn't. I'm gonna just be honest. He doesn't do much, right? So, and I think just what made me mad about that is when the trade happened. I think House of Highlights posted like some highlights of him, oh, Mo Bamba is a Laker now, and the highlights, the highlights were from a game last season when the Celtics still had Jabari Parker on the roster getting minutes, and Romeo Langford was on the floor, and Aaron Nesmith was on the floor. I'm like, bro, that's against the G League Celtics. That was over a calendar year ago. And they're posting that, just trying to hype the trade up, man. That's the only thing that made me mad. But other than that, Pelinka did his thing, which is not words I thought I would be saying, but he did his thing, making a lot of these moves, man. I got to give it an A-. I think one of the better deadlines. Now, does this translate to them being a surefire playoff team and being, a contender? Not sure. Hopefully LeBron's foot is okay. I think that's really the bigger concern, but they moved themselves forward really good, getting off of Russ's contract.
Yeah, like you say, really good depth moves. Getting the value back from Russ's contract and a pick that they did was more than pretty much anyone ever could have expected. I gave them an A. It was a really good deadline. The Mo Bamba deal wasn't great, but I can't knock them too much for it because you're not losing that much. And given the fact that you did lose a center, even if you're not going to use them that much, just having that assurance for a team that is in win now mode as much as they are, even though they are outside of the top 10 seeds, they're still in that win now mode. Having that extra bit of assurance at the center spot, I can't give them too much of a knock for that.
Should we flip to Gabe's team, the Clippers? I know he wants to talk about his boys.
Just gotta want to.
Because I'm kind of split on their deadline. I don't know how to feel. So I want to hear what Gabe has to say. Maybe he can help me see the light. Did the Clippers have a great deadline or not?
All right, man. So the Clippers, I like it because while I think that the pieces they moved off of weren't necessarily bad pieces. I do think the pieces that they brought in probably have a little bit more upside. I think everybody was really hoping the best for John Wall, and I don't really think it worked out the way everybody wanted it to. He has some flashes and some good moments, but overall, I think the general consensus was that, he wasn't really doing that great. Bringing in Bones Highland as a point guard, on the other hand, was a point guard that everybody said, why is Denver even trying to trade him? How did this fall apart like this? Because he was really looking to be one of those premier backup point guards in the league, was doing really well after the Monte Morris deal. They kind of changed their roster a little bit. And then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's on the trade market. So they got him without really having to give up that much. And then like Eric Gordon, he's been stuck in Houston forever. We even said, oh, we don't know if he's going to be traded. Like, I think he adds to their team. He's been there before. That was a long time ago, but he gets to return to a place he's been before. So it just kept that narrative of people going to old places. And he gets to come in and like really play for something for the first time in forever. And I think that makes their team better, but it also is just good for him. Like, Luke Kennard's shooting was great, but having Eric Gordon as a shooting guard spot instead, I think is a little bit more dynamic of a player. And plus, I'm not saying that Eric Gordon is Drew Holiday, but I think anything is better on the defensive end than Luke Kennard. So a little bit better there. And then, they got rid of all guards here. And the other piece they brought in, Mason Plumlee. Now, do I want Mason Plumlee going for triple doubles in Charlotte? Absolutely not. No, I don't. Is he like some great defensive big? No, he's not. But I think offsetting the stuff that Zubac does, I think he's a good backup option that sort of changes up the play style a little bit and gives them sort of a different feel in that part of the rotation. He has skill. He has value. He's a real NBA player that can play rotational minutes. And I think for a team that it was really like Zubac but no other like real good big guys, that's a solid piece to bring in. And like I said when I was talking about how much I like their deal earlier, I think the guys they brought in is a little bit more well-rounded. They have, the guard and Bones, sort of a wing, and Eric Gordon, and they brought in a big. And kind of just lost all guards. And these guys round out the team, make this depth even better from where it was. And then I think I gotta give this a B+, man. I think I gotta give this a B+.
That's fair.
There's definitely a lot to like about this trade deadline for them. I gotta say, starting off, as someone who's been really critical of not necessarily Mason Plumlee himself, but how he's been used in Charlotte, getting him for only a second-round pick is absolutely outrageous. I don't know how no one else put in a better offer, to be honest. He's been having a career year. He's been passing the ball well. He's been distributing well out of the high post. He's been solid on the offensive end. He's been solid on the defensive end. He's instantly comes in and becomes one of the best backup bigs in the league and is going to give a really good punch to this Clippers second unit. The fact that they only got him for a second, there was rumors that the Hornets were looking for a first. Now, obviously, they weren't likely to get that. And as we discussed earlier, the market this year was really heavy for trading a ton of seconds. But getting him for a first just seems outrageous. And bringing in Bones Highland for only a couple seconds, too, is outrageous as well. We all knew that he was going to get traded, and it wasn't going to be for as much as you would typically think because Denver had put themselves in a spot where they basically had to trade him. But getting as good of a backup point guard as he is, who's still so young, for only a couple seconds, for a team that was so desperate for a backup point guard, especially with John Wall out of town, Reggie Jackson out of town. Not that they were productive, but they still needed someone to play there if those guys weren't going to be in town anymore. And Bones Highland comes in and fills that role. Is going to be, or at least should be, a lot more productive than those two have been this season. I'm pretty indifferent on the Eric Gordon move. You're losing a bit of shooting, a bit of spacing. Eric Gordon struggles from three this year. Now, given he'll probably get some better looks in LA, so hopefully that efficiency picks up a bit. But I don't know. Neither or are probably going to be significant parts of the rotation come playoff time in terms of Eric Gordon or Luke Kennard, unless Gordon really starts hitting his threes and looks better defensively and a little bit more engaged, because his urgency, his mentality, his want and desire to win is going to have to shift pretty quick, because he's been on a Houston team for quite a few years now. It's kind of just been coasting around, losing games, not really caring. He's always been a pretty ISO heavy guy, but I mean, he's just been right out there with Jalen Green and KPJ as far as how bad some possessions have been, where he's just dribbling the ball 8, 10, 12 times before he moves the ball or takes a shot. So there's probably going to have to be some habits that need to be broken that he's just developed over the last couple of years that might cause a little bit of a hindrance, but I'm pretty indifferent on that one. The fact that by moving off of Kennard in that move and alongside the moves they made to bring Mason Plumlee and Bones Highland in, they didn't even lose any seconds. They didn't lose any pick equity other than a pick swap, which I believe that pick swap was to the Rockets. So, I mean, they're not going to have that swapped. They're not losing anything in terms of pick equity. They basically just traded away John Wall, Reggie Jackson, and Luke Kennard for Eric Gordon, Bones Highland, and Mason Plumlee. That's an A grade trade deadline for me. Great backup point guard, great backup center. I was shocked at how little they had to give up to get those guys. So kudos to them and their front office. They did a great job this deadline. Whether they're still going to be amongst the best teams in the West, that remains to be seen, but they addressed some depth issues. They got the right pieces for their bench. Well done by them.
I'm going to give it a B. I think it was good, not great. Obviously getting Bones and Mason Plumlee for that value. I think that's why I really do like this deadline for them. Like, I do like it. Because obviously Bones for 2 second-round picks, very good value. And then, like you said, Mason Plumlee's having one of the best seasons of his career. And as a starter, he was one of maybe the worst starting centers in basketball. But as a backup, he's instantly one of the best, in my opinion. Like, I think he's one of the best backup bigs that a team could ask for, right? And he does a lot of different things. Some of the same things as Zubac, but some different with his playmaking. You know, his lob threat ability, I think, is really good too. So good trades there. My only thing is, I do like moving off of Kennard because he wasn't going to be playing in the playoffs anyways, and he was making like $16 million a year. So good to get that contract off of your books, right? The Eric Gordon move, it just seems very redundant. Like, him and Norman Powell, I think, very similar guys, and Norman Powell's a lot better, you know, as far as what they can do at this stage in their careers. And Gordon, like you said, will have to shift not only from that losing mentality to, okay, I'm just out here getting up as much shots as I can, as many touches as I get. He kind of has to shift back to how he was playing like 5 years ago, where he was just taking spot-up shots because, you know, if the ISOs are going to be Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and maybe some Norman Powell, I don't want Eric Gordon ISOs if he's going to be playing playoff minutes. So he really has to shift his game. If he can do that, then that's going to boost this deadline for them a lot more. But I'm going to go B right now. I do wish that they could have got more of a floor general type of point guard. Obviously, that's the move that they really wanted to make, but maybe he wasn't out there, so I'm kind of fine with that. All in all, they did get better as a basketball team, though. It's just about staying healthy for them and, you know, everybody being on the court once the playoffs come around.
Man, to be fair, like, I think Eric Gordon can get back into that mentality just because, like, the last couple of years, like, this team in Houston was just so poorly ran that it's like, what is he even going to do? Like, what's even the point? So the fact that now he's kind of back in a situation where they're expected to compete, like, Eric Gordon, he was on those Rockets teams with James Harden, a ball-dominant guard, competing at the highest level against the Warriors in the conference finals every year. Like, I think he's been there, and I think he's built for that, and I think he can get back there. I really think it is just more mental, and, like, there was no reason to even want to try. Like, he was just stuck in a situation he didn't want to be in. So now that he's out of that, like, I think it's a lot different from, like, oh, they picked up John Wall, and John Wall hasn't played anything significant in years. But, like, John Wall went through a bunch of injuries and stuff and was, like, clearly not the same guy. I think Eric Gordon, in a smaller role, like, he can still have some good production. He just hasn't had a reason to really want to play in forever.
I would hope so. Maybe that Houston culture is just that toxic to where guys like Eric Gordon are visibly frustrated and not wanting to talk to the media and just out there playing like he's Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., which you kind of understand the young guys to be playing basketball the way that they do, but not somebody that's been in the league since 2008 like Eric Gordon. He's been in the league 15 years, but hopefully he can break out of those habits. Maybe it was just him like, I'm not happy, so if I'm going to be playing basketball, I'm going to just get up as many shots as possible and not play defense. Maybe that's what it is. Hopefully it is, because if so, he can be a very good piece for this team, because if he's engaged defensively, he can be on the court in the playoffs, unlike a Luke Kennard.
Hey, after what they said, like after what John Wall said about them, like I will give any player the benefit of the doubt in a Houston situation. And just to add just a little bit more to like me enjoying the Clippers deadline, we get to see John Wall go back to Houston. Now, will he put a jersey on for them? I highly doubt that. And by this point, by the time this video comes out, he might already not be on the roster anymore. But like, just from a narratives perspective, the fact that he said that on a podcast like a month ago and now he's back in that city, hilarious.
Everybody going home.
Everybody going home. Certainly seems to be the narrative of this deadline. I want to get your guys' thoughts as the bigger fans of the Pistons compared to me on the podcast. They've been the team that take all of the flyers, it seems, over the last 18, 24 months. They took the ultimate flyer at the deadline and got James Wiseman. I'll start with you, Gabe. What was your thoughts on the Detroit Pistons bringing in James Wiseman?
That's a perfect explanation. Perfect explanation, man.
Yeah, solid. Like, if anybody can turn James Wiseman's career around, it's the Pistons. So, like, sure, if Sadiq Bey is out the door and you're making a move, why not bring in another Pistons classic guy who seems to have lost his way as a high draft pick, close to bust potential, and let's see if we can turn it around. But, like, also, the future of the center position in Detroit looks pretty good already. So it's like, where does he really fit in? So that makes it kind of weird, but it's like, Like, I guess it's, I feel like there was just, like, Sadiq Bey hasn't taken the jump in production that maybe some wanted him to, and kind of plateaued a little bit after like an impressive first couple of years where he kind of came out of nowhere. But like, I don't know. It seemed like the intention kind of seemed like he wasn't meant to be a part of the long-term future. So like, I guess if he was going to be out the door anyways, at some point you took a chance on another guy like this team does. I mean, I give it a C+ deadline for them, just because you got something out of like getting off Sadiq Bey, and it's a tried and true method the Pistons have done. But because their center position's already kind of taken up by a couple guys, like, I can't really jump it anymore than like C+. I think it's just barely like, I see what you're doing there. I'm not going to fault you for it.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Detroit does this. They did it with Marvin Bagley last year, and it ended up being solid. Like, he played himself into getting a 2-year contract, making a decent amount of money, right? One thing's for sure, when healthy, they have one of the best young, big rotations in the league when it comes to Stewart, Duren, Bagley, and Wiseman. If, Wiseman can turn his career around, they would have a nice little rotation. That's some fun, but I think Sadiq Bey, it just seemed like his time was running out. It just kind of seemed like that. Like, he got moved to the bench this season after having a really good year last year, moved him to the bench this year. So it's like, I kind of understand it in a way, moving off of him. Taking a flyer on Wiseman, I mean, worst case scenario, he's just not good, and you don't have to bring him back, So I think it's one of those just low risk, high reward type of moves. Maybe Wiseman turns into what you thought he could be, and he's just really elite, right? Or maybe he's not, or maybe he's just a solid rotational player. I think it's a futures move. Obviously, it's hard to gauge this team with without Cade Cunningham on the court. So, I'm gonna trust the Detroit Pistons, man. I like what they've done in their rebuild, so I'm gonna stick with them, and I think this move will pay off in the long term, one way or another. So I'll give it a B-, just because this might not be a move that we'll be able to see until down the line.
I'm just sitting right in the middle on this move. I'm giving him a C because, like you say, we do have to see how things pan out with James Wiseman. But I struggle to give them anything more because even though Saddiq Bey hasn't been great this year, this just feels like a very small return for Saddiq Bey. And he's been a solid shooter, a decent scorer throughout the first few years of his career. And like you say, it kind of seemed that Detroit weren't interested in paying him. And I can understand why, but this seems like a team that has a lot of bigs. Jalen Duren being the most notable of them, Isaiah Stewart being very productive as well, Marvin Bagley being fine as well off the bench. But they're lacking a lot of wing play. And to move off of a good draft pick, a good young valuable wing for another big, for a guy who, even if he does come to fruition, is probably only going to be a backup big for you. It's a fine move. There's upside there, certainly, but I feel like there could have been either more value or a better fit if they wanted to move off of Saddiq Bey, which did seem to be the case. The fact that the Pistons do seem to be good at bringing in these types of guys and raising their value and getting something out of it, they do get a bit of the benefit of the doubt here, but from a fit standpoint and from a value standpoint, it definitely feels like they might have got the wrong end of the deal on this one, considering the fact that the Hawks get Bey, the fact that Kevin Knox was also involved in this trade. It feels like the Pistons might have gotten the worst player in the trade.
Yeah, but I think, like you said, we kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm thinking they're probably thinking, we can juice up these guys and maybe get that wing that we just lost to Saddiq Bey in the offseason. Like if the team is desperate for a big, we can probably trade one of these young guys. I kind of see the vision. It's a matter of them being able to do it again. So I kind of understand why you're like kind of dead set in the middle because, yeah, clearly James Wiseman is the worst guy in this deal. Like that's not a question at all. He's easily the worst player in this deal. His career has gotten off to such a rocky start. But I think if there's one place that can help turn him into some type of value, it's the Pistons because they've done it time and time again over the last couple seasons. They've really been able to juice up guys who didn't seem like their NBA career was going anywhere else, like Josh Jackson. Was able to flip him to get some pieces. Had Trey Lyles. He played really good for them. Kelly Olynyk. A lot of guys. There's a long list of guys that have gone into the short Detroit Pistons rebuild and come out a more productive NBA player.
If anybody's going to do it, it'll definitely be the Pistons. Hopefully we see some more Wiseman minutes the rest of the way. And, I mean, hey, they can have a two-headed monster of Jalen Duren and James Wiseman both playing good basketball, then that's going to be it's going to be a fun time for Eastern Conference teams moving forward. I'm going to move on to another Eastern Conference team. And I got to ask the biggest Miami Heat fan in the room, how did we feel about the only trade being getting rid of Dwayne Dedmon and otherwise just sitting pat on a team that has no depth?
Is it me? Is that me, the biggest Miami Heat fan in the room?
It's definitely not me.
You are definitely the biggest Miami Heat fan in the room.
I didn't know I was a Heat fan, man. But
I don't think it means like you're a big Heat fan. It's just nobody else is really Heat fans. You like Jimmy Butler more than anybody else.
I do, not more than Rachel Nichols, but I might be close. But
that's fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this one a very solid D. And while I'm not gonna say like, oh, you got rid of Dwayne Dedmon, like that's a super gigantic loss or something. We know what was up with this team, man. They had no wings, no forward. Like a clear depth issue at that spot. And what did they do to address that? Nothing. There were reports that Pat Riley was resting when the trade deadline hit. You're sitting currently at a 6 seed with other teams making moves to try and get better. And you did nothing. You didn't address your biggest weakness. You didn't really address anything because as a team that's trying to compete, all you did was lose a player for cash. You brought in literally nobody. You didn't even bring in like some random minimum guy, some guy that like wasn't playing minutes. You could maybe add as like a fringe depth piece that might not be in the playoff rotation just to kind of give your main guys a little bit of a rest for the rest of the regular season. Pat Riley fumbled, and he probably wasn't even awake to realize he fumbled. So, like, from that perspective, I'm almost convincing myself to go D minus because I was thinking, they didn't get like actively worse, but it's just like, wow, maybe a little bit less egregious than the Bulls because the Heat have been much better than the Bulls this season, to be frank, even though they started off kind of poorly. This is a team that, given their direction and given what they're locked into for the foreseeable future, they needed to get better, and they didn't. So I'm going to have to go with a D.
I'm probably going to go C minus. I want to say C, though, but I'm going to go C minus. Just because of the simple fact, if Pat, I think that kind of tells the story. Like, Pat Riley was resting, I think, because he knows there ain't shit that we're going to be able to do with this roster right now unless we give up a big piece, which we don't want to give up Tyler Hero or Bam or Jimmy Butler. Nobody wants Kyle Lowry. Like, it's just that's where we are. Nobody wants Kyle Lowry. The Lakers filled their point guard needs. The Clippers wouldn't have been able to get him with their assets. Like, there was nothing to be made. So I kind of understand. They are going to have to hit the buyout market heavy if any more names become available. But, I can't really be too mad at them for making no moves because there probably wasn't anything that they could have done that would have been significant. So Dwayne Dedmon is the move that they made, and they got some money back. So C minus. That's all I really have to say about that.
I gave them an F.
Real. Honestly, real.
I gave them an F. I was feeling generous with the Fs. I don't know if I was in a bad mood when I made my grades, but I was feeling generous
angry
with the Fs this year. Like you say, there probably wasn't a significant move that they could have made. But this is also a team that is a top 6 seed in the East, has played some pretty good basketball post around the first month of the season. Bam's playing the best basketball of his career. Jimmy Butler's 33. That window of Bam and Jimmy, I don't want to say it's closing because Lord knows how long Jimmy's going to be able to play, at least in the playoffs at a superstar level. But, I mean, eventually it's going to start dwindling down and starting to look a little bit more narrow. And I'm not saying you needed to go out and make a big splash, but at Jalen McDaniels, Jay Crowder,
Baisley,
Darius Baisley, with Philly not using Daniel House, even throwing a second for a guy like Daniel House, so you have a little bit more wing depth. Not saying he's an amazing wing, but it's better than what they got right now. I didn't need them to do anything major, but the fact that they come out of this with nothing and they still basically only have Jimmy Butler and Martin as actual NBA caliber wings on this team, it's frustrating for a team that is still playing pretty good basketball, that has been able to be so good in the postseason. And hopefully, like you said, Tyreek, they're able to get someone in the buyout market. I don't know who that's going to be yet, especially as a wing player. But hopefully they're able to get something, and they can at least add a little bit more depth to this team. But for a team that still wants to compete for a title, to come in and out of this deadline without adding anybody at all, it was pretty disappointing for me. So I had to give them an F.
Maybe they believe in Haywood Highsmith that much. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe they do, man. Maybe they do.
Yeah, I just find it hard to believe that Pat Riley wasn't active on the phones. Like, he probably tried and was just like, nobody's budging. Nobody wants these second round picks we got. Nobody wants Nikola Jovic.
It's really surprising, man. I feel like for years and years, it's like the Miami Heat were like a model organization. Like that's like the front office that you're just like, yeah, like you want to be like them. And just here recently, man, like
maybe they're getting stuck in their ways of like, oh, we can develop anybody. We don't need to make trades. We can develop anybody. Like that's what it seems like. They're off season and maybe not making any moves at the deadline. That's probably what that's centered around, that kind of mindset, kind of getting stuck in your ways.
I mean, we knew the Kyle Lowry deal was pretty front loaded. Like he had a limited shelf life, and he did help them get to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, get one game away from the NBA.
Did he? Did he help?
I mean,
he was on the team.
He was on the team. Maybe it was a little in spite of him, but I'll say they went further than they did the year prior with Kyle Lowry on the roster. So,
I will say, last regular season when he was on the court, they looked like a really good basketball. When he was healthy, they looked like a really good basketball team. But it seems like since he had that hamstring, just hasn't been the same. And hamstrings tend to have that effect on him. Especially at his age. At his age, he's never somebody that's been in amazing physical shape. So it kind of does make sense to see him like slow down as much as he has.
Definitely. Just a bit of context for the Lowry playoff accusations of whether he did help them. He shot below 30% from the field and 24% from three. So
he was hurt. He was hurt and trying to play through the injury. So I give him that much credit. But sometimes when you're playing that bad, you might as well just sit out.
Man, just let Gabe Vincent have those minutes at that point.
Yeah, because Gabe Vincent was really good in that Celtics series when he was playing, man. Like he did not miss many shots.
Kyle Lowry, man, I guess he had that gravity or something because he wasn't making nothing. But the team went far while he was getting minutes.
Good leadership, man. Good leadership.
Man, they better have that with him and Udonis Haslam over there and Jimmy. They ain't gonna need that leadership because they're gonna have to lead them starters to playing 45 minutes a night come playoff time. That's the way it's gonna be,
bro. I seen this TikTok and it was this dude. He's a funny account, but he was going through like basically every Udonis Haslam minute this season. It was so funny, bro. He's only scored 3 points in like I think 18 games played or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Like he was airballing mid-range jump shots and everything. I'm like, oh my goodness, man. Giving him NBA minutes at this age is criminal by Scotia, man. But I guess they have to sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, for the lack of depth they've had and the amount of injuries they've had, I mean, they just have to play him some nights. He's the 7th or 8th guy on some nights. So
thanks.
I mean, hey, they told him if he's going to take up that roster spot, he's going to be a member of the roster, I suppose.
Oh, man. All right. Where else are we at? Jazz, we have much to say about we can speed run some of these. I'm not going to lie. We can speed run some of these moves.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, Jazz got another pick. The coveted 2027 Lakers won.
Yep. Yeah, that was a good move for them. Another pick, more flexibility, more assets, all the better for them.
Yeah, man. Jazz might have to get a solid little B+ just because that pick. I feel like in 2027 the Lakers are going to be some hot garbage. So I think that pick might end up being pretty good because. LeBron might mess around and still be in the league. I do not think that LeBron will be in a Los Angeles Lakers jersey in 2027. And with that, I don't think the team will be very good. So with that, and like they got rid of some pieces, which I think makes them go closer to doing the rebuild that they kind of should be doing. So yeah, overall, I'm gonna give them a B+, man. I think they're committing to a direction, got some draft capital, and flip some of their pieces into some solid stuff. So, with solid stuff being and pick, but a pretty good one.
Yeah, they kept most of the guys that are worth keeping. Maybe if you could have kept Vanderbilt, that would have been really nice. But if not, you still got Lowry, Jordan Clarkson's still really good. Colin Sexton, Walker Kessler. You get that pick. I give them A-. You know, they did their thing. Yeah, and they're still fun enough to where they'll score a lot of points and maybe still win some games too, because Lowry's that good. Jordan Clarkson can be that good on some nights. Same thing with Colin Sexton.
Yeah, I gave them a B-. Good deadline. Would have liked to see them get a little bit more for the amount they gave up to the Lakers, but still solid. I wouldn't have mind seeing Rudy Gay and or Jordan Clarkson get moved as well, given they're both on player options, but they got themselves another first-round pick, so I can't be too critical. Another team in the Western Conference that moved also some picks was the Spurs. They moved off Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson, got in some more picks. And I think they did really well in terms of value. Jakob Poeltl netted them a first-round pick. Josh Richardson netted them 4 seconds, which was a lot more than I thought they were going to get for him. And essentially, they just moved off with the 2 guys that had value who are both expiring contracts. So they're giving a bit more time to the young guys and making sure they get value off the guys before they walk. And it's about as good a deadline as the Spurs could have had.
Great deadline. Picks, more picks, and they let the young guys shine the rest of the season. Can't ask for much more.
Yeah, man. This is a little A- deadline, man. They did exactly what they should be doing. Like maybe Devontae Graham can pass on a couple lessons to the boys in the locker room, and then flip him for something down the road.
I feel like Devontae Graham's like 36 years old.
He's not old, but
he ain't been in the league that long.
But listen,
he's about to be 28. He ain't young anymore.
Is he really? Damn.
Yeah, he's about to be 28 in a bit over a week.
Jesus.
Devontae Graham, he should be playing for a team that's playing for something, I think. So I think maybe he can pass down a couple lessons to the rooks, to the sophomores, and then flip him in the offseason or something, man, because I don't think he should be here for a long time. But just the fact that picks, just like you said, we can speed run it. Picks, A-.
100%.
Like, he's making a lot of money, isn't he, for his play?
It's not bad. He's making 11.5 this year.
Okay, that's not terrible.
12.1 next year, 12.65 the year after. So, yeah, it's not bad. And it's a very tradable contract. Good in trades. Yeah, definitely not bad. Moving on to another Western Conference team. Sacramento Kings were very quiet. Only made the one move a few days before the deadline.
I like it.
It's a nice move. Minor, but for a guy who wasn't going to be around and someone who they had the draft rights to bring in a wing who's got a bit of size, bit of upside. Played some valuable minutes for the Nets last year. Bringing in Kessler Edwards for basically nothing is definitely not a bad move.
Yeah, it's that, and I'm glad they didn't go and make anything drastic, like just reaching because other teams are making trades. What you've done so far has worked, and I think they're still good enough to be a playoff team, and that's what we want to see in Sac. So, didn't do too much. You get Kessler Edwards, who could maybe play some spot minutes. So, yeah, I'll give him a B- just for not effing things up as traditionally Sacramento does.
I'm gonna just go C, man, because it's like such a nothing. So I feel like I gotta give it the most like average score, but a very positive outlook C, just because of the fact that, like y'all kind of alluded to, like this team is doing good. This team has not made the playoffs in how long? 15, 16 years. So if they can just keep that going, don't throw off the balance, keep lighting the beam, and I know 4 and 5 just got a whole lot better, and even 6 made some decent additions, but like they're still very much in the mix, and I think they just got to keep on keeping on.
They built themselves a decent lead over like the true playing team, so I think they'll be fine.
Definitely. If there was a team at the deadline that didn't want to mess things up and didn't want to shake the chemistry and the success they've had, Sacramento are definitely the team. So definitely not a bad team to have not made significant moves. We touched a bit on them earlier, but the Philadelphia 76ers had themselves a decent deadline as well. They brought in Jalen McDaniels. They signed Dwayne Dedmon this morning as of recording this, got a couple seconds and out goes Matisse Thybulle before he ends up being a restricted free agent this summer.
Yeah, I give it like a B. I talked about McDaniels earlier. Dedmon, I would rather see Paul Reed get those backup center minutes, but I guess it's never too bad to have too many big bodies. And anything's better than DeAndre Jordan getting playoff minutes like he was last season. So not bad, I guess. Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to the playoffs, you're playing Joel Embiid a ton of minutes. Like if the least important position is backup center for the Denver Nuggets, the second least important position is the backup center for the Philadelphia 76ers. And that may only be accentuated by the fact that Embiid might miss some games. But overall, like Jalen McDaniels, player you can probably play some good minutes to in the playoffs, do some good things. Definitely going to be better in your rotation than Matisse Thybulle in a playoff situation just because of how exposable he is on offense. So I think they're just kind of building the fort a little bit stronger. So good stuff. I'll give it a solid B.
Definitely. They get a B+ for me. Daniel's pickup was a good move and quiet deadline, but I think it does the job well. Moving on to the Orlando Magic. Again, we touched on them earlier as well, but they get value back from Mo Bamba, who, as we said, hasn't really been playing much or at all because Mo Wagner's just better, period, as the backup center. Terrence Ross's-Aire is gone as well as he ends up moving on via a buyout, but they got a pick from Mo Bamba, so I'll give him a B-. He can't be too harsh with them getting value for a guy not playing.
Hey, all I'm going to say is you shouldn't have messed with Austin Rivers, man. Orlando got his ass up out of there. You got to check in with Big Dog Austin, man. See what happens, bro. Hey, Paolo better take notes, man. They will ship him out if he messes with Austin Rivers, bro. Winter Park legend, man. Check in at Disney.
No way, bro. No way. That is wild. Orlando, for me, is they're just gonna get us a C. Like, I mean, the second round pick is cool. Mo Bamba wasn't really a needle mover. I'm gonna take that down to C- because they had on a Terrence Ross for way too long. He probably could have got you more a while ago.
That's fair, Gabe. That's a fair assessment. That is true.
That is fair. Although I don't want to be too harsh on them for that because I feel like he's kind of been one of those guys who's been a valuable vet for them to keep around. And every rebuilding team needs their couple of vets.
It is a good streamer. Can relate to
Also
the young
true.
guys.
Very true. Good fit in that locker room.
Raptors legend.
Raptors legend indeed, although he's probably a Magic, but that's a discussion for another day. Moving on to OKC, we're starting to see the beginning of the era of some of these young guys they've drafted that they're just not able to keep around because of so many guys they have drafted. Darius Bazley got moved, as well as Mike Muscala. Brought in Darius Saric, Justin Jackson, and 3 second-round picks. I gave him a C-. Nothing significant here. Moving off of Darius Bazley for as little as they did is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. You get a few more second-round picks back because OKC need more picks, apparently, and it is what it is. They just keep on getting picks.
Yeah. My inside sources tell me, the OKC staff just didn't really believe in Bazley. So just getting him out of there was, I guess cool, man. But, Moose was a fan favorite. Happy to see him in Boston. But I don't know. I think OKC, they kind of are what they are right now. Like, they got the guys that they like to run. So, I don't even really expect Sarge to get a ton of minutes. Same thing with Justin Jackson, as he's always been. I guess the picks are cool. Like, I'll just give him a C. It was cool. But what they have right now is who's going to be playing for them trying to make that play-in push.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give him an F because how could you get rid of Mike Muscala? But
big moves.
He should have been there next Nick Collison, man. He should have just been there till he caught a quiz. Like,
that might be Kenny Hustle, man. Kenrich Williams, he might be the next Nick Collison.
but yeah, realistically, super lateral move. I don't think a ton of impact. I'll give it a C. I think cool enough getting a couple second rounders out of it. But, like you just said, their guys are their guys. Whatever.
Yeah, and plus they got guys that they're waiting to get more playing time to, like Dieng, obviously Chet when he's healthy next season. So it makes sense to move off of Bazley and Muscala too.
For sure. Definitely the moves that need to be made. And Might as well move off a guy like Baisley and get some value as opposed to just letting him walk in the summer. Briefly, I have to apologize to Matisse Thybulle because he's hit 4 threes tonight and has 14 points as we approach the end of the third quarter. So, hey, if he becomes a shooter in Portland, then fair play.
Hey. That would be crazy. Philly fans would be pissed if he continues to shoot like that. My goodness.
That'd be wicked, man. New third option. It's the Jeremy Grant replacement. Matisse Thybulle.
Oh, God. Don't say that because they will really buy into that. Like, yeah, we can turn Matisse into 15 a game. Why not?
I just got to start tweeting about it, I guess. We'll let them believe.
Oh, God.
Let them believe.
Did we grade the Knicks? Did we grade them yet?
I was going to mention the Knicks. We've talked about the Josh Hart trade a lot, but Cam Reddish out, moving off at first, but Josh Hart addition's good. I give him a B. It's a good move.
I like the B assessment. I think is you got rid of a bunch of guys who are not going to play in crucial minutes later this season for a guy who should be playing crucial minutes this season. I think what would move it up is if we continue to see Josh Hart kind of get back to where he was shooting last season, percentage-wise. Then maybe in retrospect we can up that to like a B+, and suddenly he's making them a lot more dangerous. But as of now, a cool B because high upside and they got better, which they should be wanting to do in their position.
I also just found out that Ryan Arcidiacono was a New York Knick. Just found that out.
So a Splash Bandicoot, man. Steve McIver.
Knick legend.
Are they Nick? I'm thinking Speed more of a Laker legend, man. He's supposed to be the next Klay Thompson. They were Laker fans were saying he was the next.
That's a Raptor legend. That's a Raptor legend.
That is a Raptor legend, right?
Didn't we have a segment on the podcast last season or in the off season, and y'all didn't know he was a Raptor?
Yeah, it was about something with shortest wingspan or something like that. Or shortest wingspan relative to height, I think it was. And he was number 1 or number 2. Completely forgot that he was a Raptor because, man, he got oisted by that fan base within the first 25 games of the season.
I think that makes him a Raptor legend, man.
He was the villain.
Him and Aaron Baines, man. Those are the Raptors legends for the last few years.
Man, Aaron Baines was so good
was
in
the
Boston.
Man, and Aaron Baines was the tank commander, and we will forever thank him for his aid in acquiring Scotty Barnes.
That's crazy because Aaron Baines played critical playoff minutes for us just like 2 seasons before that.
Yeah, and I thought it was a really good signing at the time. I thought he was going to come in and be a solid center, and unfortunately, that was very much not the case.
Yeah, my guy fell off for sure.
Yeah, he definitely fell off. Moving on to the Pelicans. They were a team that only made one move at the deadline, brought in Josh Richardson from the Spurs. They sent Devontae Graham out alongside 4 second-round picks, so they blew all their second-round pick flexibility in this year's trade deadline. I like the Josh Richardson acquisition, but honestly, 4 second-round picks seemed really heavy to me. I gave them a D.
I'm more of like a C minus on this because, like you said, that's a lot of second-round picks. But I do like it for the fact that they moved one of the guards that they kind of have in that rotation. So maybe that's more Kyrie Lewis Jr. minutes, which I will like. Young guy, you spend a lottery pick on him, see what you got in him. So I do like that. Josh Richardson, good player. He'll fit in. I kind of do like, Najee Marshall's minutes on the wings a lot, Trey Murphy. So we'll see where he fits into that wing rotation. But like you said, 4 second-round picks, that's a lot for Josh Richardson. Like, that is a ton.
Yeah, I'm going to go C minus, man. I can see the vision from a pure roster construction standpoint, but 4, like I know teams were just throwing around second-round picks like nothing, but Josh Richardson's value was not high at all, I don't think.
Yeah, I honestly don't understand why teams were throwing around 4+ second-round picks for like mid-tier wing players. Like Jay Crowder getting 5 when he hasn't played basketball in like 8 months.
That was pretty wild.
So people just are just not valuing second rounders, I guess, man. I don't know if it's just because this is why we need an expansion, man. Every team has so much talent. They're like, I don't need second round picks, man. We got like 9 players on the roster already. Give us a first, and we're like full on rotational guys. At that
Expansion,
point,
man.
hey,
It's almost like the
give me-
back-to-back MVP was a second-round pick, but whatever. Apparently, they don't matter. So,
and a 4-time champion, Draymond Green. But yeah,
whatever.
who cares?
All good. We'll just toss them away.
Just a second.
All I'm saying is, if you're giving the Spurs an extra 4 second-round picks, they're gonna find some gems out of those.
They're gonna find
some
somebody
talent
that's
coming in.
from like, I don't know, somewhere in South America that is just a hooper that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah,
The true 2 years away from being true 2 years away.
Yes,
They'll find them.
and they'll develop them.
Definitely. Moving on to the Timberwolves. I'm not going to dive into them too much because we've talked about them lots over the last week. But like the Mike Conley addition, I think he's going to fit in well. And Juan Toscano-Anderson gives them a little bit more wing depth as well. I gave them a B+.
A minus. Not much more to say. I love the Mike Conley move.
I would have to give it an A+ pick for the fact that a Mike Conley video got us our most views ever on this channel by a mile.
Nicest guy in the NBA, man.
Hey, man. Nicest guy to our channel views. OSU legend. Gotta respect. Timberwolves, A-. I'll go with the good fit. We talked about it last week with the whole Gobert thing. Solid point guard minutes.
Real quick, I was watching their game tonight before we started recording. They've been looking a lot better, obviously, like recently, but they just looked a lot more fluent with Mike Conley being out there. And he just like gave Anthony Edwards the green light to where he's like, okay, I can just score the basketball and defend. And I don't have to go get 5 assists a game because D'Angelo Russell likes to score too. Like, he can just lock in on being the best version of himself. I love it a lot. And McDaniels was getting easy shots. Rudy, probably the best game I've watched him play personally all season. Like, he was, I think, perfect from the field at the time. Was rebounding the ball, getting just easy looks at the rim. Mike Conley's going to unlock a lot for that team. Hopefully, Cat is back soon enough to where they can get some chemistry, get some rhythm going into the playoffs.
Definitely. Great fit in Minnesota. Very good addition for them. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks. We just talked about them adding Jay Crowder. Moved up a couple of vets and Jordan Nwora, as well as those 5 second-round picks. Hefty price to pay for Jay Crowder, but they really needed a bit more wing depth and a bit more wing production. And even though Jay Crowder hasn't played basketball in a very long time, I think it's a valuable addition for a team that is going to be pushing for a title again. I gave them a B-.
Same here. I like it more so for the fact that George Hill is gone. He was getting playoff minutes last year, and he was getting picked on. I think Javon Carter is a lot better than George Hill. So I do like this move, and Jay Crowder gives them that wing depth that they do need. So B-, a lot of second-round picks, but I guess it's okay for a team that's trying to win a championship.
Yeah, I'm pretty with you guys. I think it's good for pretty much all parties involved. You know, the Bucks, they're here to compete. Giannis isn't old by any stretch, so they're going to be around for a while. I don't really think second rounders are going to do too much for them. I think they're just going to probably maintain much of their core and just be able to keep adding guys through like small trades, buyouts, free agency signings. Like, I think they'll be cool with the type of player you usually get through a second round pick. And then, you know, Serge Ibaka, he might get to sign somewhere and help do something if he's able to contribute somewhere in the future. George Hill, same thing. Maybe just, I don't know if a contender is going to sign George Hill at this point and give him playoff minutes, but, you know, maybe he can go mentor some young guards somewhere. Like Jay Crowder finally gets out of Phoenix, gets to play some good ball. So hefty price to pay, but for all the people involved here, I think it does some good things.
I don't think George Hill is playing any playoff minutes anywhere.
No, but he can mentor somebody somewhere just a little bit, give them some lessons.
There's one team that would pick him up if he became available, and it would be the Clippers if they don't get Westbrook. That would be the one team.
Yeah, that would be the one team.
They're going to make me a George Hill fan, man.
George Hill back home, man. He went to college in Indianapolis, played his best years with the Pacers. Now he's back home.
Man, we don't need to be talking about George Hill becoming the reason we don't need to be becoming George Hill's fans in 2023. That's some desperate time for point guard play.
Best basketball is way behind him.
Way behind him. Liked him in his day, but his day is long gone. Moving on to the Memphis Grizzlies. They were another one trade team. Danny Green was inevitably going to be the guy who got moved. It seemed inevitable when he got moved there last year. He got moved alongside 3 second-round picks for Luke Kennard. Gives this bench unit a little bit more shooting, which, as much as Memphis kind of get thought of as a pretty good shooting team, they could use a little bit more consistent shooting off the bench. I gave them a B-.
I'm gonna judge the Grizzlies again, which I said I was never gonna do, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give them a C+. I do like the Luke move because I found out in the game the other day that they are one of the worst shooting teams in the league, which, like you said, you kind of don't think of them like that because they got Bane. Jaren Jackson has that reputation of being able to knock down threes. Same thing with like Dylan Brooks, but not a great 3-point shooting team. If Luke Kennard can get playoff minutes consistently enough, that would be a nice addition to have on the floor. Somebody that can space the floor, be a daily corner option for John Morant. I'm giving him a C+ because I'm kind of mad. I keep seeing reports that they were involved in talks for like Mikal Bridges, for OG, but they didn't pull the trigger. I would have been interested to see if they made those moves, man. But something tells me that they weren't willing to give up, a Jaren or Desmond Bane in those moves, which kind of makes sense. But I kind of wish they would have tried to make one of those splash moves.
While the splash would have been cool, this roster is so young, is so good, and plays so well together with high chemistry that I really don't mind it. So I think I am more in the B- camp here. Everybody knew Danny Green was kind of on his way out. Like, he literally played just a couple games for them just to show that he could still do some stuff. But, like, while the Grizzlies are a contending team, I think Danny Green just didn't really fit in there. I think he's a player who's going to want to play for a contender, but maybe one who has a little bit more spots open for players to come in and actually play consistent minutes. I think that's just the kind of player he is. 3 second-round picks given up, not great, but Luke Kennard, bringing up the shooting point, it's like that's a guy who, if there's one thing he's going to do, it is shoot the ball. And, of course, I'm going to have a little bias being the only NBA player born in the same hospital as me. So, W for that. I guess I have some representation on the Grizzlies these days.
Maybe he'll get some tattoos when he, spends a little time in Memphis, man.
Maybe.
Nah, the memes, though, they were comedy, bro. Yeah. Go ahead, Luke, man. Get some tats. We talked about the Heat, Clippers, Lakers.
Pacers would be the next team. Pacers were pretty quiet. Definitely not the deadline that most people would have expected when the season started, where Buddy Hield would have likely been on the move, where Miles Turner would have likely been on the move. They essentially just took on some contracts in the Jay Crowder trade, and alongside it got to pick up 3 extra second-round picks. They had to lose Terry Taylor and Goga Batadze because of it, but neither of which are going to be great future key players to this Pacers rotation, at least not likely so. And in doing so, they get 3 extra second-round picks for doing nothing, and because of that, I gave them a B-.
It's a shame that Goga, he had that infamous draft day picture where nobody talked to him at media, but everybody's talking to Zion and Ja. And, he doesn't really have the NBA career to, for that picture to be relevant anymore. Kind of sucks. We're surprised to see him get waived, though. That's a first-round pick that did. Yeah, B-, C+ range. Didn't do too much. Take a flyer on Jordan Ward. Maybe he can get consistent minutes there. Maybe. They do got a little bit of wing depth there already with, Benedict Mathurin, Buddy Hield, Chris Duarte, still getting minutes for them. So it's cool. Getting some second-round picks is also good, so.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to be in that, C+, B- area. Just cool to get some second-round picks, but I don't think any players involved here really going to be much of a needle mover now or ever for these teams, however long they end up staying there. So just slight win for them. Keeps their direction consistent, trying to rebuild and get as many pieces as possible.
Moving on to another team that had a pretty quiet trade deadline, but was trying to get some more draft capital, the Houston Rockets. They brought in Justin Holiday, Frank Kaminsky, and got a pick swap from the Clippers, which is pretty irrelevant, but nonetheless, they have it. Out was Garrison Matthews, Bruno Fernando, and Eric Gordon. I gave him a C. Don't really get much back. You're not really losing anything that you care about. Eric Gordon's finally out of the locker room. Would have been nice if they moved him a year or two ago where they would have got a bit more value. As far as having a veteran in the locker room, I don't really feel he has much value from that type of standpoint anymore. So I'm pretty indifferent to their trade deadline. I'm giving them a C.
C minus because of what you just said. They should have moved him a year ago, and Jayshawn Tate seems like another guy that could have been moved.
D because of what you just said. Completely just totally mismanaged. And it's like you had Eric Gordon could get something off of him, and then you traded him finally way too late, and you got back a guy that you just got rid of and a pick swap that you're not going to swap because you're worse than that team.
Yeah, the pick swap makes no sense. Like, you should have just bought him out at that point.
It's like
just get some seconds, bro. Like, what the hell?
this team a year ago was like, okay, we need to get John Wall out of here and we need to get Eric Gordon out of here and rebuild. And then you traded Eric Gordon for John Wall. That's like D. Like out of context, okay, maybe like a C. Like Eric Gordon's value wasn't that high, but like in context of like this whole overarching situation, D.
I'll give this front office one positive thing, then I'm gonna kill them with some negatives. We're probably spending too much time on the Rockets, but it seems like they draft pretty good. Like, they get talent good. Like, they have an eye for talent. But dude, the trades that they make, like they fumble a lot of trades that they've made, man. Like, it seemed like they got the worst end of the James Harden trade when it first happened. They traded Victor Oladipo for basically, roster fillers that were going to leave in the offseason anyways. Like, that's pretty much what they did. Like, then this. Like, what the hell? A pick swap with a team that is trying to win a championship? What does that do for you? That doesn't do anything for you. Like, oh, my goodness, man.
Definitely some questions within the Rockets organization as of late. That is for sure.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But I don't know. At least the Eric Gordon era is over, and we're starting to have a little bit of a changing of who is on the Mount Rushmore of guys that are going to be involved in trade rumors. So at least that's off their back. I'll give them that much.
We got to update after we finish talking about the teams. We need to talk about who's still on that Mount Rushmore.
Definitely needs to be an updated Mount Rushmore with Eric Gordon finally being moved and with Miles Turner having signed his extension. Moving on to the Golden State Warriors, a team that is at least hoping to be very much on the opposite side of the Rockets this season. They brought back in Gary Payton, and out went James Wiseman as part of the deal. They ended up bringing in and then shipping out 5 second-round picks. So they didn't lose any draft equity in doing this, just shipped off their former lottery pick. I gave him a B trade here. James Wiseman might still have some value, but he doesn't have value to Golden State. And as long as Gary Payton can play, which is a question mark, he's going to be very important for them heading into the postseason.
I really don't want to grade this one just because, like, what the hell is going on with Gary Payton? It's such, like, a weird situation that I'm not really sure how it's going to play out completely. Plus, like, the fact that they let him go in the offseason just to trade back for him, like, it really seems like, if I'm being consistent, I think at best I have to give them a C because at least Gary Payton is a good player once healthy. Like, he can help them compete. But I was just talking about, like, you could have got rid of James Wiseman a while ago and probably got some decent value. And now instead, just like with Eric Gordon, you're literally trading him to get back a guy that you just had and could have probably just kept. So I'm going to give them a C in the context of, like, you used somebody who was once an asset way too late and got a guy that you already had on your roster. Like, they could have done better.
Yeah, that does suck. But I'll give them a B minus because it seemed like, they did wait a little too long to trade James Wiseman. But, if Gary Payne's able to play, then that's a good addition. If not, James Wiseman didn't play anyways. Dante DiVincenzo's playing really good for them. So maybe it won't hurt them as much. It'll just be like a lateral type move. Like it's almost like no trade really happened, right? So I'll give him a B minus because if Gary Payton does play, that is a very good added piece to a championship quality team.
Definitely. We know he's going to fit in well. We just got to hope that he can be healthy and ready to go for their postseason run. Moving on to the Denver Nuggets. They made a deadline morning move to bring in Thomas Bryant. They've also signed Reggie Jackson and got in a couple of second-round picks for Bones Highland. Of course, he left. They had to give up a few second-round picks to bring in Thomas Bryant, and David Reed is also out. I give him a C minus. The minus part of this being the fact that they traded away Bones Highland, and it wasn't for great value. I questioned the decision. It's the decision they came to. I just don't agree with it. But getting Thomas Bryant was a good addition. This is a team that has lacked a backup big for a bit of time now, and Thomas Bryant's been really productive this year, so being able to bring him in, as you mentioned earlier, Gabe, having a backup center to Jokic is not the most primary thing, especially come playoff time, because Jokic is going to be that guy. He's going to be playing a lot of minutes, but they still needed someone that could log some minutes there, and Thomas Bryant's going to be able to do that and take a little bit of the load off of Jokic through the regular season to make it a bit easier for him.
Yeah, I think I feel a little bit more positive. I think I'm gonna go C plus just because I don't really know all of the full situation of what happened with the whole Bones deal. Like I don't know why he went from like they're trading other guys to give him more minutes to now they're trading him. I don't think Reggie Jackson is the worst return. Obviously, I think his best ball is behind him. He took a big step back from last season. But I do still think he can be solid, and especially in a limited role. I think he can do some pretty decent things. And then Thomas Bryant, when he played this season, like he looked real solid. So I mean, can that just give Jokic a little bit more of a rest? Maybe cut some of his minutes going towards the postseason. Once you're kind of more confident, like you've secured the 1 seed, maybe let Jokic, if you're feeling good about a game you're playing, let him just get like 26 minutes, 28 minutes, and then just say, hey, take the rest of the night off. And then he's like super fresh, super ready to go for the playoffs. Even if Thomas Bryant just plays like spot minutes in the postseason, I think he can provide something for them for the rest of the regular season that does have some sort of value.
Yeah, the bone situation, obviously we don't know the full details, but it seems like it was pretty sour. And a team that's trying to win the championship kind of can't have small things like that breaking you down. So I understand moving off of him, even if the value wasn't there. I love the Thomas Bryant move because, it's anything's better than DeAndre Jordan getting minutes as a backup center, man. I promise you. Like, no shade to DJ, but, all shade, bro. Honestly, like anything's better. And Thomas Bryant's playing the best basketball of his career. So very good move there. I think they only gave up some second-round picks for him and Davon Reed, whose only moment that I remember is him clamping up LeBron in the first quarter of an NBA game. Good trade. Very good trade. And, yeah, Reggie Jackson's not the greatest, but the second least most important position on this team is backup point guard because Jamal Murray in the playoffs is going to be getting a lot of minutes. And even if so, I think they're comfortable with Bruce Brown, if he's the guy coming off the bench as the guard. So, Reggie Jackson's just kind of like guard depth type of move. So I like it. I'll give him a high C plus. I can't be as critical as on the Bones Highland thing because, it seemed like it was just deeper than basketball. Like something was just really wrong there. So they kind of had to like their hand was forced. Like they had to make that trade. So it kind of makes sense.
Definitely an interesting situation. Hopefully, Bones is able to have a good run with the Clippers for the rest of the season. Moving on to the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, they made the Kyrie trade. I won't dive into it too much as we've talked about it a lot, but great trade. Didn't have to give up a significant amount for him. I went with an A for the Mavericks. The only thing that held me off from giving them an A plus was the fact they had to include Dorian Finney-Smith in this deal, which still was good value for Kyrie, but in an ideal world, he would have kept him around. But Kyrie's a great addition. Is going to make offense a lot easier than Luka's ever had it, and is going to make them a really fun team the rest of the way.
People are about to start hating, man, because Luka and Kyrie are now 0-2 together at the time of recording. Listen, man, let it play out. Let it play out. I think I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I'm going to give them the A plus, and here's why. yes, it's probably an A trade just from looking at just the strict details of it, what you gave up and what you got back. But I think one of the narratives that was starting to form with this team was like, okay, you got Luka, but I don't think Luka and just a bunch of guys are going to get the job done. You're going to need to bring in another star guy. And they showed that they were willing to do that as an organization. And so just the fact that they kind of got Luka some help, because, I mean, there were already some quality players on the roster, but the fact that they got him a co-star to go alongside him just shows a different level of commitment, and I think will really help to cement him as being a Dallas Maverick for a very long time to come. So just looking at the nuance and how that can affect them really years down the road, could this backfire in their face because of, Kyrie kind of being an X factor and not really knowing what's going to happen with him? Could it? But I don't really want to speak in hypothesis like that. So I think just for what it does, I'm going to go ahead and give it the A+.
Dang, we're like a whole letter grade separated, y'all. Obviously, I got on the podcast and I said how much I wanted to see this trade happen, and it did, right? I got him at like a B. Very good move. Get her on too. Who cares? First couple games together, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve when you got somebody in Luka that's used to having the ball in his hands all season long. You got a guy like Kyrie coming in. It's going to take a little bit of time. I think the thing for me, we kind of talked about it last week. We wanted to see them make, maybe some other moves or at least try to. They didn't really do that. And there's always the possibility that Kyrie Irving does not re-sign. So I can't give it anything higher than an A or anything higher than a B because you never know with Kyrie. He might not re-sign. And then this could just look like total disaster. Like Dallas will be in the same situation that they were before the trade without Dorian Finney-Smith. So that's the only thing for me. Those are the only two things that I'm really like mad about. Not mad about, but questioning a little bit. But you get Kyrie to pair with Luka, it's a positive trade nonetheless that has the chance to bring real success in the playoffs. So they'll be okay though. 0-2, like the game against the Kings the other night, they should have won that game. They should have won. And if Dwight Powell could rebound the basketball or do anything on the basketball court, they would have won that game.
I just think like having Mark Cuban as an owner, I think Mark Cuban is a guy that can keep Kyrie in a good situation. Like a guy that's pretty much usually has a really good relationship with players, which often is not the case with owners. So like just from that level, that's already one big positive. And then also the drama was just kind of built to be there with Brooklyn. The fact that Kyrie was the big villain coming out of Boston after saying he'd re-sign. Kevin Durant, biggest villain in the league, was with the Golden State Warriors and, has this whole thing with Twitter and everything. And then, trading it for James Harden, really cashing it all in, and now like they have this giant target on their back. That was built to be a really stressful situation. Plus Kyrie's stuff during the pandemic and what happened there. There was just so much straight baggage that the Boston situation still kind of looks bad. And it looks like a pattern of he forces his way out of places. But looking at it, the Cavs had a good run. And I think he really did think he was ready to lead his own team. At the things fizzled out in Boston, there was a bunch of role stuff. But then him leaving Brooklyn, James Harden said the same thing a couple days ago. He's I wasn't built for that and I needed to get out. I think Kyrie realized that situation just wasn't a good situation. And he got out of there. It wasn't even they were playing bad. They replaced Steve Nash with Jacques Vaughn and became a really good team. But he wanted to get out of there and he did. So if there's any type of organization or situation that he's going to come into that's going to be good for him, it's going to be a good owner, a solid, consistent star that's going to be there for a while, and not really a giant target on your back because the team Kevin went to is the big favorite. He just went to Dallas and he's playing with what most people probably consider a top 3 player on the planet. And people aren't really calling them favorites. So I think it's a good situation for him.
Yeah, you would hope so. And me and my dad were actually talking. Him playing under Jason Kidd, I think might also really help him out. Because Steve Nash wasn't a former point guard, but Jason Kidd's actually a good coach, right? So I think that could also maybe help. I'm really hopeful he does resign, as long as this thing does not just fall apart. They go 0-10 their first 10 games, and then they get bounced in the first round, something like that. Hopefully that does not happen, because I think this can be a really fun duo for the next, 4 or 5 years. Like, I would really love to see these two stay together and really figure each other out so they can, compete with the super team in Phoenix and the Warriors and, the Clippers while they're still around and the Nuggets, like really compete with those guys because they got the talent, just those two. They're talented enough.
So Phoenix is a super team?
Super team, man.
You heard it here.
You got two top. Devin Booker was playing like a top 10 player in basketball. Kevin Durant was playing some of the best basketball of his career. DeAndre Ayton still, when he's on his game, he's a top 10 caliber center. And Chris Paul's still good. He's just not Chris Paul, but he's still good. And they got a lot of depth pieces like we were talking about earlier. That's in the state of the league right now, that's a super team.
Okay.
Sun super team.
Yep.
Discussion will have to be had, but that is definitely a very good team. Moving on to the Cleveland Cavaliers. They were, along with the Chicago Bulls, were a team that did not make a move at the deadline, a team that weren't as much in a position that they felt they need to make a move like the Bulls. They've already run a Danny Green in the buyout market. Because of that and the fact that I didn't really feel like they needed to make a move, they already made their big splash, obviously, in the offseason to get Donovan Mitchell. But Danny Green's a good addition, a little bit more shooting on the wing, which is something they need. I give them a C+.
Same. Yeah. Danny Green. Oh,
I was gonna say B-, but just real simple, just like good wing piece, good vet piece that's gonna probably help them more in the postseason. Just because, they're a talented team, and Donovan Mitchell's been around the block, and Kevin Love's still on the roster, but like more playoff experience guys is probably what they needed, and just a guy who can be a wing shooter, good fit.
I was gonna say C+. If Danny Green is able to, get all the way back into shape and play, good addition. If not, the team's already good enough to make the playoffs and be competitive. But shout out to Danny Green for coming back as soon as he did, because he got hurt in like late May. He's back off an ACL that looked very nasty. Like, shout out to Danny Green, man.
Definitely.
Real
Especially considering like when that injury happened, given his age, I wasn't sure we were going to see him back in the NBA. So kudos to him. Nice to see him back on the floor. Moving on to the Charlotte Hornets. They most notably moved off of Mason Plumlee and Jalen McDaniels, got back some picks, and Raptor legends Fima Hyluk. I give them a C- because I honestly didn't love the return they got back for both of their guys they moved off of that much, but they get back some picks and some pick swaps, some second rounders. They moved off some guys they weren't going to bring back, so I can't be too harsh, but definitely would have liked to see them get a little bit more than what they got.
You can go, Gabe.
I mean, there's not really much more to say than that. This isn't any like blockbuster type deal, not even really like a mid-tier deal. I probably could have got more out of these guys, but I also think that they should have, especially Plumlee, traded him earlier, which seems to be a trend with a couple of the guys that have gotten traded here at this deadline. But like C- is good to get pick equity for a team that's clearly trying to blow it up. But I do think the biggest positive that might make me just go more right in the middle of C is the fact that it just opens up more minutes for guys like Mark Williams to really come in and develop some young center talent instead of giving so many minutes to Mason Plumlee on a team that is clearly at the bottom of the league.
And it's like you're reading off of my notes, man. Yeah, I'll say C. It would have been nice to see them like maybe try and move off of Kelly Oubre. I know he's hurt, but he would still have some value. Maybe Terry Rozier if you could have like explored that. But yeah, the return wasn't great. But like Gabe said, seeing Mark Williams get more minutes is great. Nick Richards get more minutes is great. And also like Bryce McGowan's getting more minutes because you spent, a mid-second round pick on him. See what he has because he was a first round type talent. He's getting more minutes now. So I'll give him a C. Wasn't amazing, but at least you're clearing the way for some of your young guys to get some minutes to see what they got.
Definitely. Hopefully that's the biggest benefit of those moves. You get those guys getting those minutes. Moving on to the Brooklyn Nets, obviously have Kevin Durant leaving town, have Kyrie Irving leaving town. They also then received and move off of Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and a ton of first-round picks. coming in their way. I gave them a B minus. I struggled to give them anything more just because they did have to move off of KD and Kyrie in such a surprising and drastic fashion. But I think they did pretty well, especially in the KD trade as far as the return. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are some good pieces. They had a ton of first-round picks, and they put themselves in a spot where whether they want to retool or they want to go to a complete rebuild, they have a lot of flexibility and a lot of nice pieces moving forward.
That's a good assessment. I think this is a really divisive trade deadline because I do think that there can be the camp that's like, yeah, like screw what the return was. Like, look at the fact that they had these pieces and that this was clearly a failed experiment from the macro scale. And that could really make people say, like, this is a D because they brought these guys in and cashed in their whole franchise and now they're just like back to square one. But I do think there is the other camp that I'm more of a part of that it's like, they tried something and the last time they cashed in to really try and compete, they ended up with literally nothing and were just zero assets, zero talent, bottom feeders for several years. So the fact that they cashed in, got themselves in a position to compete, it didn't go as planned and they kind of had to just abandon ship, but they still came out with a lot of assets and look like they have a solid future going forward. I think that's a B trade deadline.
I'm kind of leaning a little more towards B minus. I think it's good that even though you waited to trade Kevin, you still got a pretty good return for him, I would say. You got some good NBA players back, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith for Kyrie Irving. You got pick equity, which is something that you lost in the Harden trade, something that you really haven't had in like a decade, if we're being honest. So I think that is good. I just feel like there's probably a world where they could have got more. Like if Katie would have publicly been made available, you probably could have got more. That's the only thing that I dislike a little bit. But other than that, they have a good roster of NBA players though. And they're a fun team to watch since they made that trade. So I like it for that moment. But B minus is about, I'm saying what you did. I can't really give it too much higher than that because you did just trade James Harden last year and then Kyrie and KD within the same week. That's a lot, but it seems like they're going in a decent direction, like Gabe said, because last time they had to go through a rebuild, they didn't have anything. So at least they have talented players and future draft picks.
I think they knew when to move on is the big thing. I think didn't wait too long, and these are guys who they could have just rode it out, and then both of these guys walk, and they're just left with nothing. So the fact that they were like, yeah, even though they look pretty good right now, probably not getting a championship out of this, just decided to cut their losses and just take the high road with it. That was good for me.
Some teams should take notes. That's what I'm saying.
Some teams definitely need to take notes. One of those teams that definitely does not need to take notes is the Boston Celtics. They acquire Mike Muscala for Justin Jackson and a couple second-round picks. Nothing notable for a team that is one of the most well-built teams in the league, is one of the reasons why they're one of the best teams in the league again this season. I give them a B minus, solid veteran depth addition, give them a little bit of spacing, and you're not really giving up anything too significant.
I'm gonna call it a C. It's like I'm not obviously second round picks have like zero value given the way this trade deadline went, but like I don't really expect Mike Muscala to be playing playoff minutes. So to give up multiple picks just seems like a little like, I don't know. I probably would have just rather them done absolutely nothing, but what they did wasn't necessarily bad. Maybe he can play enough minutes throughout the regular season to give some other guys less minutes and really keep them a little fresher for the playoffs. So keep it at a C.
That's fair. I'm gonna give it a B. We needed more spot up shooting. Sam Hauser was really our only like real spot up shooter. I think Mike Muscala adds a little more that they kind of needed. Like Celtics were linked to Kelly Olynyk a couple weeks ago, so it kind of makes sense that they went after a stretch big type. This probably eliminates like Luke Cornett getting playoff minutes, which as good as he's been for us, I don't want to see him in the playoffs too much, so that's kind of fair. And probably eliminates any chance of Blake Griffin having to get playoff minutes if an injury happens. So No, I think it's a good move for not giving up anything because Justin Jackson was not playing basketball for us. And Brad Stevens, I think he's made it clear that any type of picks does not matter because we're trying to win a championship. Did the same thing in the offseason, traded for Michael Brogdon, gave up a first-round pick. Who cares? We're trying to win a championship. So I like the move. He's looked good so far in the first couple of games. And if he'll get major minutes in the playoffs, it's to be seen. But I think either way, the Celtics have a good enough roster, to win a championship with or without Mike Muscala.
Moving on to the last team, the Atlanta Hawks. They moved on from Justin Holiday, Frank Kaminsky, and Kevin Knox, as well as 5 second-round picks. They brought in Garrison Matthews, Bruno Fernando, and Sadiq Bey. I gave them a B. I like the Garrison Matthews and Bruno Fernando additions as far as a little bit of depth goes. Bruno Fernando had some decent minutes early on in the year. Garrison Matthews gives you a little bit more three-point shooting, and Sadiq Bey gives you a little bit more quality on the wing, a little bit more three-point shooting on the wing, a little bit of shot creation as well if they need, which outside of Bogdanovic, they can be lacking at times off of the bench. And I like the flexibility they have with Sadiq Bey now moving forward. If they like what they see from him throughout the remainder of the season, maybe that gives them a little bit more flexibility to move off of a John Collins. They decide to keep Sadiq Bey as their guy and have him and DeAndre Hunter run at the 3 and the 4. Gives them a little bit more flexibility that way. So I'll give them a B. Decent trade deadline for them.
Yeah, I think this will help them a little bit more in their playoff push. Just another good, solid starter quality guy that they can bring in. You didn't really give up anything major for it. Like I just feel like I keep repeating, just second-round picks seem to just have no value in this trade deadline. So, 5 seems like a lot, but at the end of the day, I guess it is what it is. I think a good pickup for a guy that the Pistons weren't willing to pay, so I guess we'll see what Atlanta does with that in the future. But I think at least for this season, this is going to make them look more solid going into the postseason.
I'll go with about a B minus. Sadiq looked good tonight. Other than that, Garrison Matthews probably add a little bit of shooting, right? He's somebody. He's another dude. Maybe it's just people in Houston. He has irrational confidence. I feel like every time he catches the ball, it's going up. He's a funny guy to watch, man. But yeah, Sadiq. Hopefully that will give them the flexibility so we can finally release John Collins from the Mount Rushmore because he's the head face right now. But yeah, good little trade, man. You didn't give up too much against Sadiq Bey, which is a W because he's a pretty good basketball player.
Definitely a solid basketball player. Getting him for a bunch of seconds, even if it's 5 of them, is definitely not a bad thing. Speaking of the Mount Rushmore, we've now graded all 30 teams.
Did we?
Did we skip the Raptors?
Yeah, I think we forgot Toronto.
I might have skipped over the Raptors, given the fact we talked about
he was
last
ducking.
week.
He didn't want to talk about it, man. He was upset.
There's a few teams I mentally skipped over that we've talked about. I will say that. Raptors, I gave a B minus.
Same.
You said a B minus?
B minus, yeah.
Really?
Someone was living on Raptors Twitter too much, seeing all the negativity.
Raptors beef?
That's what I'm hearing.
For the Raptors, listen, I think I'm going to have to go with a C minus. And here's why I'm going to go with a C minus. Is because, this team just got a little bit better. But what did we say last week? Who is coming off the bench? And whichever guy that is coming off the bench, I don't think that guy's going to be too happy. What do you got right there? Probably a little bit of chemistry issues. Also, a lot of the guys that were in trade talks, I don't know if their value is going up. Contracts aren't getting longer, and I mean, unless this team goes on some crazy push to end the season, I think the Raptors going into the trade deadline were we titled a video that we released. The trade deadline basically runs through the Raptors. The Raptors control the trade deadline. They were the hot seller. I think teams would have given up a lot to get some of these guys, especially KD on the Suns. A lot of Western Conference teams probably would have given up a solid package. But what did the Raptors do? They decided to sit on that and really just let it ride to the offseason. And now when they get there, I really don't know if the packages that they're going to be able to send out to get things back are going to be quite as good as what they could have been. So I know I've made it known several times the direction I think the Raptors could go in. I do think they have a very limited ceiling with this core. So given that, the fact that they went in the opposite of that direction and maybe passed up, and I've said for a lot of teams in this video, oh, they probably could have gotten off of him earlier and gotten better returns. I feel like the Raptors could get towards that by sitting on assets a little bit too long. And because it's the opposite direction I think they should have gone in, given they're standing in this conference right now, I am going to have to go with the C-.
I think the only thing that's tough with, because I agree to a point that they might end up missing on the key window to trade guys as far as value goes, but it sounds like pretty much any trade the Raptors were going to make at the deadline, they were just getting a ton of picks and they weren't really getting any player value. And I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're full rebuilding, then sure, but objectively, if I'm just thinking of the Raptors trade deadline, they were never going to full rebuild. That just wasn't going to happen. And so with that in mind, trading away OG for just 3 firsts and no player value doesn't really make any sense. So I can only be so harsh on them not making a secondary move and not being able to sort out the fact that they have 6 starters and be able to retool a little bit. So it would have been ideal, but I can't give them anything more than a B- because of it. But given at least what the rumored offers were that were out there, I struggle to make it any worse.
Yeah, I'm like Dave. I get what you're saying. Like sometimes you can't hold on to guys for too long, but I think there's a flip side to that too, right? I think sometimes it's better to wait until the off season to make moves. I kind of wanted to ask you guys that about KD, like with the Nets have maybe been better off just waiting until the off season to make that move. I think there's kind of two sides to it as well. So I'm not like completely pissed the Raptors didn't make any other trades outside of getting Jakob Poeltl. Like maybe it just wasn't there. Maybe they are valuing OG a little too high, so they will have to wait till the offseason to really make that move. So I'm not really like too mad at them. Now maybe if re-signing Freddie and Gary Trent is an issue, that might be something more to dive into. But sometimes the trades just aren't there. Like if we're just being honest, sometimes they're not there. So like Devin said, like just getting picks and no player value back for OG, is that what they want to do? Because it's clear they're trying to commit to some type of competitive team. It does make sense why they didn't make any other moves because they probably weren't going to be ones that would benefit them right now. So it kind of makes sense a little bit. I will go about B- too because they got a big. I can't fault them for getting better as a basketball team. Now figuring out, how your rotations are going to be, that's a Nick Nurse problem. But from a managerial standpoint, I think they had a solid trade deadline.
So here's my thing about waiting till the off season, right? Is that when it comes to the off season, we aren't sure what the makeup of the league is going to look like. We don't know who favorites will be. We don't really know what the landscape is going to look like at that point. And I think right now, and this is a possible theory to why picks just seem to be flying everywhere, the league right now was wide open, especially the Western Conference. And you think usually when you trade a high-value player, you trade them cross-conference. So you're thinking the Raptors, if they're making these trades, there's probably going to a Western Conference buyer. And, looking at that, it's just now was the time where a lot of teams are probably going to think, oh, there's this giant window to go in and try and win a title. Let's get as good as we can right now because we don't know if that opportunity is going to be there for us next year. And so given that, if you're trying to use your leverage as a seller, you could say, hey, you're going to have to give us this for the piece now or else your window might close. Now, if you're a team that could have used OG as maybe a solid defender on KD, and now he comes out and he just cooks you for 7 games and now you're out, you might turn around next year and not have that same opportunity.
Or you might overpay in the offseason and get an OG. Like, that's always a possibility, too. I do get what you're saying, but, it kind of wonders to me if it's more of a, Masai thing, because if the reports about, Memphis really being engaged, wanting OG were true, I wonder why that trade didn't happen. Maybe Masai was asking for too much. Maybe he wanted Desmond Bane back too or something like that. And like, I don't know. I would love to be able to hear like those trade talks. Like what is the reason why that trade did not get done? Because OG seemed like the inevitable name that needs to be moved, right? Didn't happen. Will it happen in the offseason? We'll see. I don't know. I can't really be too mad at them for staying put because they did get better as a basketball team adding Pirtle. But I do see from the fans' perspective, you're probably like, you're kind of tired of this iteration of the team. You would like for them to choose a direction or make that drastic change. It does kind of make sense why you feel that way.
Just a bit directionless overall. I think it kind of did not resolve the issue they had at all of like, oh, we have way too many forwards on this team. And now they still have too many forwards on this team.
Who's been because I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched any Raptors games since the deadline. Is Pirtle's played so far, right?
Yeah, OG is still out, so Podol didn't start the first game just to get him up into speed and adjusted and whatnot, but he started the last game. But yeah, OG's been out, so they haven't had to have a proper dilemma yet of who's coming off the bench.
Interesting.
That Pistons game didn't have Gary Trent in either.
Yes.
So we haven't seen the lineup yet.
I feel like
the beauty of the NBA these days, you can have 6 starters and you hardly ever have to have a dilemma of figuring out who comes off the bench.
Till now, I guess. I feel like it's either going to be Pirtle comes off the bench but plays a lot of minutes, or OG is full-time off the bench. Because anything other than that doesn't really make sense to me.
They could do Gary Trent off the bench, maybe a little less likely, but I think it's an option. I think if you just run Fred, 3 wings, Podol.
That does seem like the Raptor thing to do.
It's very Nick Nurse.
Still maximize your wings, even if it's sacrificing the shooting of Gary Trent, even though, he's very hot and cold player, but still a good shooter.
So, I mean, it's possible to bring Gary, but most likely probably will be OG, especially because there's so many talks like, OG might be a little frustrated with his role, might want a little bit more, and he was the biggest name in trade talks. I think they may be a little bit more willing to compromise his happiness.
I think coming off the bench it can be a bigger role, right? I think it could be. There's just that negative connotation with, I come off the bench now, but that could be your chance for a bigger role. In a way.
I think the biggest question will be if they have a conversation with Gary and if it seems that him coming off of the bench is going to be the nail in the coffin that has him not wanting to come back to Toronto, then they'll probably try and avoid it. If he's fine with it for the rest of the year, then they'll probably make him the guy off the bench. A, because I think it gives them a little bit better scoring punch as far as the 6th man. And B, yeah, there is the argument that OG is the guy who's more likely to get traded. He's reportedly more unhappy. There's also an argument in that case that if they bury him on the bench, then they just plummet his trade value this summer because teams know that OG has to be moved this summer. So I think there's an argument to be a little bit wary of that too, so you don't hamper his trade value this summer if their idea is then to move him this summer. If they don't care to move him, then it's here or there. But if they want that option available, then that's probably something they should be cautious of.
It's a lot of psychological warfare that's going to have to go on in the next couple months, man.
A lot of egos to manage and trade values to maintain. I'll say that much.
But I want that job.
That's why they get paid the big bucks.
Yep.
30-team trade deadlines, though. I think the biggest question now is the biggest winner and the biggest loser. And I think my answer is the Phoenix Suns and the Chicago Bulls, and I don't really think it's too incredibly close.
Phoenix Suns are definitely my winner. That's for sure. Biggest loser. And I did give out 3 F grades. I did do that. Man.
Yeah, you gotta decide. I think my lowest grade was the Bulls. I think I gave them a D minus. So they're my loser. Like I can't make a case for anybody else. I gave the Heat a C minus, so I can't even say that.
Honestly, give me the Heat. Give me the Heat.
That's fair for your assessment because they're the team most built to compete, but they didn't do anything. So that does make sense.
I think they should have had more urgency to make a move to try and compete. The Bulls should have made a move too, but they just stayed with the status quo. They stayed with their so-called non-direction. The Heat didn't commit to what they're doing, which was a little bit frustrating.
It's crazy because it was probably easier for the Heat to make some type of move to help them than the Bulls to make a move to help their direction.
Yeah, probably.
And
the Heat don't need much.
Who was the third F? Chicago, Miami, and who was
the
your
Wizards?
third?
Wizards.
Washington. That's right.
They're just
when in doubt,
franchise.
When in doubt, it's the Wizards.
I love it though because
Portland,
it used to always be the Kings, and now it's not the Kings. So I kind of love it. Like there's a new scapegoat, and it's not Sac.
It is definitely not Sac.
Portland is next though. If we're having these same conversations in the offseason and next trade deadline, they're going to become a team that I'm just like, let's not talk about them.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about them until Damian Lillard's off that team. Like, nah. Good.
Yeah, definitely. Portland are going to be in that conversation, and they're definitely not there yet, but a team that could be on that watch in the next year or two is the Hornets. I hope that's not the way they go, but they could end up being in that conversation too.
They're close. And they got the young star that will force his way out early if he has to.
Yeah. They of the 4 teams that are gunning for number 1 overall, they might be the team that has the most relying on it for this year's lottery.
Houston's not that far behind, man. They need a cultural shift. That's my issue with them. I like the talent, but they need a revamped culture really bad.
That's the thing with me is I don't know if a pick changes what they need to change there. I feel like there's much deeper issues at play there. I don't know what the solution is, but a pick would help if it helps them win a few more games. But there needs to be something a little bit deeper than a bit more talent on the roster.
Yeah, hey, we rag on the Wizards and the Blazers all day for just being perennially mid, but like the Rockets and the Hornets might be setting themselves up to be perennially ass. And now I know being perennially ass is a great way. Ask Joel Embiid. It's a great way to build up some talent on the roster. The process Sixers were perennially ass for several years, just looked silly, and they came out of it. They haven't made it to the conference finals yet, so they haven't had as much success as maybe they could have. But like they've been consistently towards the top of the East for about half a decade now. So like sometimes if you can turn it around the right way, that can be okay. But the Hornets have like never been good. Ever.
Nah, yeah.
Like I don't know if I've ever seen them above. I don't know if I've ever had home court advantage in a playoff series since I was born. Since they became the Bobcats, like since like that expansion started, not counting like the old Hornets that became the Pelicans.
I think they had 148 win season, but they were a 6 seed.
And then like I don't know, the Rockets, that is just it's scary, man. Culture is so bad. It just I don't know. That's a team that needs a savior. I feel like because I mean. They need
like a godfather to come in, man. Like it's bad there. Just on the surface level, it just seems so bad.
They just got the guy who was viewed as like the number 1 pick until draft day. Paolo wasn't the number one pick until draft day. Like everybody was saying it was Jabari. And then like draft day came and shit. So they had the guy that people had touted as number one. And it didn't really move the needle or get anybody excited at all.
He was my number one all up until I did my mock draft and I really started watching film. I'm like, nah, Paolo's different. Yeah. He's different.
Yeah. Not that I can speak to the whole body of work of the college season, but from what I watched, Paolo definitely looked like Paolo was just clearly the number one guy. It really didn't seem that close at that point in time. After that, you could make the discussion of between Ivy and Jabari, but Paolo definitely seemed like the guy in this draft for sure.
Yeah, don't forget about Chet, man.
Yeah, Chet too. Chet. But like you said, Gabe, like it's cool getting talent, but what's talent if it doesn't fit and there's no culture around it? You just got a bunch of guys out there playing AAU basketball, and that's what the Houston Rockets are doing, man. Like fit is like in basketball is probably more important than having talent, man. Because we've seen teams that talent-wise, like they don't look great on paper, but those pieces fit together and they play well together and they have a good culture. And guys like each other. You know, that's almost more important than just accumulating talent. So I think there needs to be a bigger shift in Houston. Feel bad for Steven Silas, but he probably has to go. And maybe the GM needs to go. There's a lot wrong in Houston, man. A lot wrong.
I'm going to say it, man. You guys just said, hey, I don't know if any teams are getting moved. Listen, bro. Hear me out. They already moved the Hornets once. And look at all 30 teams in the NBA. And every single other team has been good, like really good, like a contender for at least one stretch of years, right? They're the only one, the Hornets, that have literally never come close to being a contender.
Pelicans.
Like ever. I think the Pelicans on like 2008 Chris Paul's prime, like they were pretty dang good. Now that Western Conference was really stacked.
It's a second round team though.
much closer than the Hornets have ever been. The Hornets if the Hornets did that, that would be a career best. And also the Pelicans right now, where they are healthy, is better than the Charlotte Hornets have ever been.
That's kind of like comparing the Hornets and the Pelicans. That's like the tallest midget, analogy. Like, yeah, the farthest the Hornets got, Game 7 of the first round, but the farthest the Pelicans got is probably like 5-6 games in the second. Like,
I still think that's a like a level above the Hornets.
Gabe, I can assure you, nobody's getting moved. No franchise.
I'm telling you, bro. Listen.
I think I have a better chance of having a Valentine's Day tomorrow.
Hey, man.
Than a team getting moved.
I guess I'm gonna have to take you out after the gym, man, because if any
I got work. Nah.
Because listen, bro.
It's not.
You might say, I don't think any team's getting moved. You think people thought the Seattle Supersonics, a team that went to the finals, a team that had Hall of Famers like Gary Payton, a team that just had Ray Allen on the roster was going to get moved, and they went to Oklahoma City.
It's different now because all the talks are about expansion, not moving franchises, right? That's why I think it's different. If this was 10 years ago and this was a similar situation, I can see what you're saying. But the talk is about we're trying to expand, get teams in new cities, not so much ripping franchises apart and moving into a new city, right? They want to actually expand the league, 31, 32 teams, right? I think that's where the difference is.
Do they expand though? Because the NBA, this seems like NHL, they are adding teams, bro. Like they are expanding.
NBA's next, man. The
NBA hasn't added a team since like 2004. It's
been a while. Yeah,
it's been like 20 years. Like they made the Charlotte Bobcats like 20 years ago. I guess NFL's not too far behind, but NFL's sort of in a relocation era.
The NBA kind of expanded a little early, though. Like they did a lot in the 80s and 90s, right? More so like the NHL, I think, has 3 expansion teams in the last 20 years. The Blue Jackets were like 20, 21 years old. So I think like 3 expansion teams because Vegas,
Vegas
Seattle.
and Seattle are both really
Vegas,
new.
Seattle, and then Columbus and Minnesota both joined in 2000.
Yeah, so a lot of theirs has come post-millennium, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and a team returned to Atlanta in 99. Nashville joined in 98. So most North American leagues had a 15, 20-year gap within the turn of the century, but
yeah,
it was definitely even still into the late 90s that the NHL was expanded to 30.
Yeah, it's about time for the NBA to do so, man. You know, there's too much talent in the league too, man. Like there are guys in the G League that are worthy of being in the NBA. There are guys that are overseas that are worthy of being in the NBA. There's just not a lot of roster spots. There's a lot of guys on teams not getting minutes because there's so much talent on those teams, right? So
yeah,
those are all the reasons why expansion is needed.
A lot of talent for it, and even like key driver, of course, is always going to be money for expansion from the league standpoint. Even the most unattended teams this year from a fan standpoint, Wizards still filling out 88% of their stadium, Timberwolves 89%, Pacers 89%, Thunder 89.5%. Like they're not dealing with significant empty stadiums like they are in the NHL at times, where there's teams that are getting 12,000, 13,000 fans a night. So the fan support's there locally. The fan support is there on a global scale, on a continental scale. The talent's there, of course, but the financial incentives are there for the league to do it too. So I think it's just a matter of time for them to kind of put the building blocks in place and make sure that that comes together over the next 5 or 6 years.
I can assure you there are some Blue Jackets games where there's like 13,000 people there. And you can tell there's 13,000 people.
For sure.
It's crazy. Like the difference between 13,000 and a sold out arena is like it's day and night. Like, oh my goodness, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's always been the biggest downside to the NHL, unfortunately, is some markets don't do so well from the attendance standpoint. The NBA has been in a good spot that fortunately they've always usually been pretty good from attendance over the last little while. But yeah, there's definitely some spots that struggle in the NHL.
Yeah, from like just from a fan perspective, like I want to experience expansion and what that's like, just because as a guy who mainly follows like NBA, NFL, I can't say like I haven't seen it in my lifetime, because I think the Texans were like 03, 04 and the Bobcats like the same thing. But I was not making conscious thoughts at that point. Like I would love to experience an expansion while I'm following the league and just see what that's like, you know, seeing like a fan base cultivate, because you got to think at some point, like there's going to be the people in that city that probably gravitate, and then maybe some people who are just now finding the league and getting into it. And they're like, ooh, I want to root for the newcomers. But like, also, I don't know. Do teams like, are there people that might gravitate from their previous fanhoods and like come to this new team because it didn't exist?
The Gabe, he just muted himself.
Yeah, muted himself.
Unplugged, my fault, but yeah. But I do think it'll just be an interesting thing to experience expansion like that.
Definitely. Like an expansion draft would be fun. Like if they like televise it, get to see.
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
The NBA's been so smart too with like where they place teams. Like just thinking about like how Devin was mentioning, like not a lot of arenas are really empty. Like about 90% of arenas are full at all times. Like that's like really good, right? It's because like they're putting teams in places like Utah where there's no other professional sports teams, and you know Charlotte, you know, limited, you know, play like a lot of places where there's not really, you know, NBA teams. Oklahoma City, like that's just smart. Like those fans have no choice but to gravitate towards that professional sports team. Almost genius, man. I like it. Milwaukee, you know, not a lot of teams there. Like very, very smart by the NBA.
Very good business decisions. We'll give the NBA that. They do make some very good business decisions. Sometimes it can be questionable for other aspects of the sport, but they do run a very good business.
I still think they're going Vegas, man. That's the market everybody's tapping into.
Yeah, they kind of have to. That's the moneymaker.
Yeah, I'd imagine next expansion's probably a 2-teamer. And they probably go Seattle and Vegas. That would be my expectation.
man.
And if it's not in the same year, it'll be pretty much one after another.
Yeah.
Ja is coming to the East.
Did we already have this discussion? Like Memphis
Yes.
is more east.
Memphis
is more east. Yeah.
Is
Memphis is more east than like
Memphis and New
Chicago.
Orleans.
It's like
Yeah.
more east than Chicago, bro. Like it's crazy.
At that point, I might be more east than Milwaukee because I think Milwaukee
so.
is west of Chicago.
I think so. Insane. I'm about to sound like I might sound like a casual, but isn't Trey Murphy in the dunk contest?
Asking about the dunk contest doesn't make you a casual, bro. I couldn't tell you all 4 people in it because somebody prominent like dropped out.
Somebody did?
I'll look here. Yeah, someone did. I forget who it was.
Was it Shaden Sharp? I know it was a Blazers player.
Yeah, it was Shaden
He
Sharp.
dropped out. I was
dropped
excited
out.
for him.
Because he said, I want to focus on the second half.
Yeah, Jericho Sims accepted an invite after Shaden Sharp decided not to participate. Trey Murphy has been included. Kenyon Martin Jr. has been included. And Mac McClung.
Mac McClung's winning it, bro. That's my prediction right now. And this is why I was going to say I might sound like a casual. Trey Murphy does not seem like a dunk contest kind of guy.
He really doesn't.
He's athletic, but even like his in-game dunks, I'm like, they're just like, normal dunks. He's a 6'7", 6'8" guy, kind of athletic, long arms. Like, okay. What's he gonna do in a dunk contest? I really gotta see this. Like maybe he's been hiding his bounce from us or something, man. Damn, I'm mad Shaden Sharp dropped out. I thought he was gonna win it. Personally, he's gonna be my pick.
I do think I know why Ja Morant won't do it. And I think it from really thinking about it, and when I think about Ja Morant dunks, I never really think about like a big, flashy, crazy type dunk. It's usually just him like rising up and putting somebody, or oftentimes almost putting somebody on a poster. And so if there's nobody to dunk on because it's not in game, like I don't know how much it translates. I think he might think he's such an in-game dunker.
Yeah, I think he could do some crazy stuff, but I do see what you're saying. Like, it might only look cool because it's Ja Morant in a dunk contest, the stuff that he's doing, but it's like it might not be like Zach LaVine level stuff or Aaron Gordon level stuff or even Derrick Jones Jr., right?
Definitely.
I'm trying to think of guys that could. Maybe Malik Monk if he was, fresh out of college. He don't really be jumping like that anymore.
I can tell you prediction people are going to say that it's not good and that they should cancel the dunk contest and replace it with something else.
Of course. Make the three-point shootout the last event. Like, if they did that, then people would be disappointed with the three-point shootout. You just can't make basketball fans happy, bro. There's always something to complain about.
I just don't think the three-point shootout, ever gets old because it's so simple of just who can make the most shots.
Yeah.
I do feel like with the dunk contest, we've just seen so much stuff. I think it could benefit them to take a couple years off to really, let a fresh group of guys come in and maybe get a fresh couple of ideas come in as well. Because I think they took a break in, the late 90s after, Kobe's dunk contest. And then they came back with the Vince Carter dunk contest. Tracy McGrady too. I think the same dunk contest.
Maybe it was a break because of the lockout. Maybe they didn't have an All-Star game that year. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know. I wish Anthony Edwards would do it. That'd be fun.
Take a break and do a crazy horse game with a bunch of good shooters or something. You tell me Curry versus Dame in a game of horse wouldn't be a good time? Come on now.
Half court knockout or some shit like that.
Yeah. So knockout would honestly be fun.
They used to do horse 2010, I think was the last year they did it. was actually entertaining. It was like I forget who the third dude was, but it came down to KD versus Rondo, the most random matchup. But it was actually like a really fire matchup.
Oh, for sure. Oh, that'd be good.
If they could
KD
get
was
the
hitting
best,
like
if they could get the best guys to participate, like I would still love to see like the 1-on-1 or 3v3 tournament, but I don't think you're gonna get Kyrie versus Steph in a 1-on-1.
No, we'll never get that.
I would take like Mike Beasley against I don't know, just like random role players who are elite 1-on-1 guys. Like I don't know, Michael Porter Jr. against somebody. Like I don't know, just guys that can get buckets. Like I would take that honestly. That would be fun.
Give me Matisse Thybulle against Stanley Johnson. That's what I want to see.
That is the most especially if it's like 3 dribbles, no rebounds. Like, oh, that's a nasty 1-on-1.
You and nobody else wants to see that. Respect.
Oh, I am well aware. I am very much on an island with that take. I will live on that island.
You might be a sicko.
I am definitely a sicko. I love
a nasty
defense.
God.
3 dribbles and give me Embiid versus Jokic 3 dribbles, man.
3 dribbles is definitely the purest ones, man. Like you really got to be able to get open quick and hit tough shots. Like give me like Cam Thomas against like I don't know. I'm trying to think of like Jalen Noel or something. I don't know, like just role players that can get buckets. I would take that. That would be fun. That would be fun.
Fun.
A 3-on-3 tournament would be fun too. Threes is some of the purest forms of basketball as well.
Definitely.
Man says Stanley Johnson against Matisse Thybulle.
That's one of the nastiest things I've ever heard of.
Winner gets a max contract.
Oh man. Hope someone signs Stanley Johnson.
He did just randomly get waived the other day.
Yeah. He still deserves some minutes somewhere.
Remember he was like the third best player for the Lakers for like a few weeks last season?
He was.
Really good for them.
Hell, he shot this. I mean, I haven't watched many Spurs games since the start of the season. Stanley Johnson has shot 45% from 3 this year.
How many attempts?
Only on 1.3 attempts, but like, it's not bad. It's not terrible.
That's good.
Like his previous career high was 32.4 on 2.2 attempts with Toronto.
Drug testing.
No doubt, man. That's wicked.
Drug testing.
Okay, I have a very random question. It just hit my mind. Probably talking about All-Stars because one of the best All-Stars, and I need your guys' take on this. Who is LeBron James' biggest rival of his career?
The Golden State Warriors.
But like, pick a person. Like, who is his? Like, think like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, or like who? What player? Like Michael Jordan, probably Isaiah Thomas. I would think.
I guess the closest, in my opinion, would be Steph. So I think he's somebody that somewhat really challenged him, just as far as taking away championships from him, MVPs when LeBron was still, good enough to win MVPs back then. I guess some people might say KD, but I don't think KD ever really threatened LeBron like that until he joined the Warriors. So I'll just go Steph. That's why I said the Warriors overall. I don't think LeBron really has a rival. It's hard to answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think I'd really say any different. I'd probably have to go with Curry if I'm picking someone.
Yeah, like Jordan didn't really have a rival. It was just the Pistons.
Yeah.
And once he got past them, he never saw him again.
Bro, the fact that him and Isaiah Thomas just absolutely despise each other.
It's beef, but I don't think it's a rivalry. It's just beef.
I would call that a rivalry because, it translated on the court too.
Magic versus Bird is probably one of the few, if only, like pure rivalries that we've seen. Well, we didn't get to see it, but the game of basketball is seen. It's like,
Fair, that's fair.
yeah.
I mean, Wilt versus Bill Russell, that's going back a long time. But
Was that a rivalry though?
There's like lighter ones, like something like a Curry versus Dame. Was Dame ever better than Curry? Probably not.
Never
But,
beat
like,
him in a playoff series. Nobody ever seriously said Dame was better.
even like LeBron. It is tough to say because you talk about like LeBron versus the Warriors, like LeBron versus the Spurs, 3 final series. LeBron versus
That's
Craig
probably more of a
Popovich,
rivalry.
low-key.
That's probably more of a rivalry there.
If they didn't really play directly on the court, but I feel like LeBron versus Kobe was just something people argued for so long. Damn near LeBron's biggest rival might be Michael Jordan because that's the biggest like who's arguing who's better than who. They just didn't ever play at the court at the same time.
Skip Bayless is his biggest rival.
I don't know if you can be a rival if he's never acknowledged Skip Bayless.
Skip Bayless. That's what makes it even more beefier, man. The beef runs that deep.
Trae Young and Julius Randle. There was a good little run of Westbrook versus Durant.
Yeah, I guess. Dame versus OKC.
Dame versus Paul George is crazy.
The Knicks versus Success. It's a fun one. LeBron versus the entire Eastern Conference for a decade. That was fun.
Yeah, that's one word to use.
Shaq versus Hakeem versus David Robinson. That's a fun little one.
Hakeem watched them during that time, man. Nobody was messing with Hakeem. I personally think Hakeem's the best big ever, but that's just me.
Yeah,
extremely biased
I'm
on
probably
that
with
team, so.
I'm probably with you on that.
I think he's the best center ever. I think the only reason why people like Shaq and like Kareem and people like that are
Accolades,
higher
man.
than him in all-time lists is straight accolades. Because like, if Hakeem didn't play in the same era as Michael Jordan, there's probably more than 2 championships. There was 2 rings not won by Jordan, and who did both of them go to?
Hakeem Olajuwon. That's one player that I really wish I got to watch in real time. Like, I feel like his highlights don't do him justice, man. He was ridiculous, bro. And some of the stat lines he put up, insane. He was a monster.
Wicked player.
Bro, I looked up 50 greatest rivalries in NBA history, and I want you guys to know that the first entry on this list is players versus the rap game. And the second entry on the list is Gilbert Arenas versus Javaris Crittenton.
Wow.
That sounds like the type of list that would have Devin Booker against the Raptor.
It had Spurs versus Mavericks Battle of Texas because they were both like good in 2000.
Manu versus Bats.
LeBron
Smack that
versus
bet up there.
LeBron versus Deshaun Stevenson. Maybe that.
Oh God. Why were they? I forgot about that.
LeBron versus Rondo for a second there might have been funny.
Rondo low-key owns LeBron. You being honest.
I don't know though. The iconic picture is against Rondo's team. So the game 6 picture is like looking down. That's against Rondo's team, man.
That's fair. Rondo ran LeBron out of Cleveland. People forget, man. People forget Rondo was the best player in that last LeBron series in Cleveland. And it got so bad, LeBron started guarding Rondo, and Rondo was still getting off.
Stan Van Gundy versus David Stern is crazy. Mark Cuban versus David Stern. This list
Is David
wild.
Stern the biggest NBA villain? That's a legit question.
Maybe
God
the
rest his
Lakers
soul.
fans. I think because
God
I think
rest
the
his soul,
Lakers,
man.
probably the Lakers fans because the Chris Paul trade. But
I was just thinking about that the other day. That was kind of egregious that trade got vetoed. That was very egregious, man.
Pretty crazy.
Is LeBron's greatest rival Lance Stevenson? I don't know. Kobe Bryant versus Rashad Bell.
That was a real beef.
Ron Artest versus the Palace at Auburn Hill.
Oh God.
I'm done, bro. Shaq versus the free throw line. Rasheed Wallace versus referees. Nike versus Adidas. This has Rondo versus Chris Paul. That's how you know it's something special, man.
I think we're reaching that point where we need to start wrapping things up.
I think you're fine.
Yeah.
Right.
I just picked this 1 a.m. too.
Yeah, I'll end it off with this because we never got to the discussion. John Collins is officially on our Mount Rushmore.
I forgot about that.
We need to decide the next 3, and I'll assume that OG is going to be one of them.
OG.
Is Buddy Hield to that point?
I don't think so.
He might be, because I don't know if there's 2 other guys I'm picking over him. I feel like there's not as obvious a picks right now.
Yeah, since the Russ LA thing is taken care of,
Russ is moved.
he's excluded.
Miles Turner is extended.
Eric Gordon's gone.
Yep. Terrence Ross is gone.
Terrence Ross. Man. I'm trying to think of teams.
Kyle Kuzma's a free agent, so he's not going to have any trade
Kuz.
talks.
Nobody on the Bulls could really be on that list because nobody's like really in trade talks.
Yeah.
Damn, Peyton Pritchard, is he on there by default?
I don't think those rumors have been around long enough yet.
Yeah. He's letting it be known. Like he's like, I still want to be out of here.
Yeah.
Pat
I
Bev
just scored
might be
15
on.
points. I want to go.
Pat Bev might be on the Mount Rushmore actually being traded currently.
Jay Crowder too.
Yeah.
Bojan Bogdanovic might get up there.
Of being traded.
Yeah, he's just on the Pistons, bro, with a bunch of young guys.
He's only been there for half a season though. He can't be on the Mount Rushmore.
That's
Nah.
true.
No shot.
He's not tenured enough, but
And he gets moved quite a bit.
He does. Man,
I'm trying to think of teams.
it's tough.
Minnesota.
It's not as obvious anymore, which is nice, but
Clippers don't really got anybody. Lakers don't really have anybody anymore.
still the rest of the
James
Warriors.
Wiseman got moved.
Kuminga and Moses Moody might get up there, man. That little package.
Maybe Moses Moody. I think Kuminga is part of the future, but Moody
Yeah.
potentially.
Moody's got an argument.
What about
Moody's
some
got an
Hornets? Kelly Oubre? He hasn't even really been there that long either, though. So it's like,
Yeah, I feel like none of those guys were actually in trade talks until they were bad to start this year. So
how about Terry? I feel like Terry's kind of had his name thrown around like last year a little bit.
yeah, Terry's got an argument. He's got an argument.
Terry. OG's on there. Terry's a maybe. Pell's got anybody? Big Val.
I don't think so.
Dang.
Maybe
I think that's
Dylan
it all.
Brooks. Dylan Brooks might be close.
I feel like he's never really in trade talks. He's just in those hypothetical Twitter ones.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's like never the subject. He's just always the return package when people say the
Yeah.
Grizzlies.
Yeah, he's always the this is how the salaries match guy.
Yeah. That's fair.
Jordan Clarkson might have been getting close for a second.
He's close.
Yeah, he's in the conversation for sure.
Dang.
That's a hard. That just got hard.
Yeah, it's a lot harder list than it was a month ago.
Duncan Robinson?
Yeah, actually, that's probably a good shout. Actually,
Crazy
probably
boy.
a good
I
shout.
forget he's even a basketball player anymore. I haven't seen him play in a long time.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't even know if he still records his podcast. To be honest,
Yeah, I'm not sure if he does.
the other guy, Joe Harris, maybe, I don't know.
I feel like guys like Joe Harris and Seth Curry are about to get up there real soon.
Well, Seth's about to walk this summer, so then he loses his eligibility, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes.
This sounds weird, but I feel like he's always in trade talks no matter where he is. Christian Wood.
Yeah. Yeah, wherever he goes, he always is. For sure.
Yeah, we got to fill that 4th spot, man. Might need to be Christian Wood.
I feel like I need to make it known while we're still on here that Josh Hart dropped a 27 piece tonight.
Dev said that earlier.
And then, okay. I'm late.
Pay attention, dude.
Yeah, Duncan Robinson has not released a podcast episode since August 11th.
Dang. Man's trying to lock in for the season. Didn't help.
Didn't help.
I'm surprised the team wouldn't trade for him. Just be like, fuck it. Let's get some shooting.
There's a lot of contracts to match, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, he is making a lot of money for not a lot of production.
It's like you can include Devontae Graham to get Josh Richardson, or you can include Devontae Graham and things to get Duncan Robinson. That's when it starts to get dicey, because then the and usually starts to become a valuable player. It's not ideal.
And he's not shooting 45% anymore either, so that's another big thing.
Wow, exactly. It's one thing when he was on a big deal, but at least shooting well, but you're on a big deal and not shooting well, that's not ideal.
And he's only 2 years into that contract. That's scary. Jeez.
Yeah, that was a rough deal from the day he signed it, and that was if he continued to play well. Even then, it was like it's a lot of money, but it's only gone downhill, unfortunately.
Miami some frauds, man. Hate to say it.
Definitely tough. Shooting guards getting money didn't bode well that summer. Duncan Robinson money was tough. Evan Fournier money was tough.
Norman Powell got a big contract.
That's tough. The boys got paid, but didn't do well for the teams that paid them.
Fournier. I randomly seen him getting minutes like a few games ago, and I'm like, dang, I forgot about him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how much that situation changed.
I'm good to wrap up though if y'all are. Boys tired.
For sure.
Too. Definitely good to wrap up.
Dang, another 3-hour episode did not feel like it.
And it goes by quick.
We've been streaming this whole time too?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, we've been live the whole time.
Shout out to the chat if anybody's there.
Sir, we do appreciate the continued support. Last week has been absolutely nuts, so we do appreciate it. If you guys did enjoy the video, then be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. We appreciate the continued support, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.